What if Deku never needed one for all? What if instead of being quirkless, young Izuku Midoriya encountered something far more alien and powerful? Today, we're diving into a world where, at just 4 years old, Izuku becomes the host to an otherworldly kaiju consciousness, transforming him into the most feared and respected hero Japan has ever seen. This isn't your typical underdog story. This is the tale of a boy who became a monster to save everyone he loves.
Welcome, legends, to Chronos Recom. I wrote this story myself, so if you have any suggestions or what-ifs you want to see, drop it in the comments below. Also, just wanted to let you know I've got a Patreon set up now for anyone who wants to support the channel directly. You can get early access to stories, submit direct fan requests, and get exclusive content. It's totally optional, but if you want to help keep these stories coming, check it out. Links in the description. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell so you never miss an upload. Let's dive into this story.
The meteorite wasn't large, barely the size of a softball, but to 4-year-old Izuku Midoriya, it might as well have been a treasure chest. Its surface pulsed with strange blue-green light that danced beneath what looked like translucent skin rather than rock. The camping trip had been his father's idea, a rare family outing before Hisashi's next overseas business trip. While his parents set up their tent in the clearing, Izuku had wandered just far enough to discover this marvel nestled in the soft earth of the forest floor, partially hidden by ferns. "Wow," he whispered, crouching down. The light seemed to pulse faster as he approached, almost as if responding to his presence. Without thinking, he reached out, his small fingers stretching toward the glowing object. "Izuku," his mother's voice called from the distance. "Don't wander too far." "Coming, Mom," he called back, but his attention remained fixed on the strange object. As his fingertips grazed its surface, he felt a sharp sting. Pulling his hand back, he noticed a small cut on his index finger, a bead of blood welling up. The meteorite's pulsing suddenly intensified, and the blue-green light seemed to flow like liquid, reaching tendrils toward his bleeding finger. Izuku gasped as the light touched his blood, then sank into his skin. The sensation wasn't painful, more like a cool stream flowing up his arm. The meteorite's glow dimmed until it was nothing more than a dull, ordinary-looking rock. A strange warmth spread through his body, centering in his chest. For a moment, he felt dizzy, his vision blurring. Then it passed, and he felt different, stronger, as if something inside him had awakened. "Izuku, dinner's ready." His father's voice broke through his thoughts. "Coming," he called, casting one last glance at the now dormant rock before running back to the campsite, unaware that his life had just changed forever. That night, as dreams of heroes and villains filled his sleep, Izuku's body began to change. His skin hardened and darkened, taking on a reptilian texture. His limbs elongated, growing thicker and more powerful. His jaw extended, teeth sharpening into fangs. By the time his transformation was complete, the small boy was gone, replaced by an 8-foot creature that barely fit inside the family tent. The sound of tearing fabric woke Izuku Midoriya, who sat up groggily in the darkness. "Hisashi?" she murmured, reaching for her husband. Instead, her hand touched something rough and scaly. She froze, then slowly turned on her flashlight. The scream that followed echoed through the forest, sending birds scattering from nearby trees. "Inko, what?" Hisashi bolted upright, then stared in horror at the creature crouched where their son had been sleeping. "What the hell is that? Where's Izuku?" The creature blinked, large emerald eyes reflecting the flashlight beam. It opened its mouth, revealing rows of sharp teeth, but instead of an attack, a confused whimper emerged. "Mom, Dad?" The voice was deeper, resonant, but unmistakably their son's. "Izuku?" Inko whispered, trembling. Is that you?" The creature looked down at its clawed hands, then let out a terrified wail. "What's happening to me?" He began to shake, his tail thrashing against the tent poles, collapsing one side. Hisashi acted quickly, grabbing Inko and pulling her toward the tent entrance. "We need to get out before he brings the whole thing down on us." Once outside, they watched in shock as the creature that was somehow their son stumbled out of the collapsing tent, towering over them in the moonlight. His body resembled a bipedal reptile, with armored scales covering his torso and powerful digigrade legs that ended in three-toed feet. A tail nearly as long as his body swung behind him, knocking over their camping stove. "Mom, Dad, I'm scared," Izuku whimpered, his voice rumbling in his transformed chest. Inko, despite her terror, felt her maternal instincts override her fear. "It's okay, sweetie," she said, her voice shaking. "We're here. We'll figure this out." Hisashi circled their transformed son cautiously. "It must be his quirk," he said. "It's finally manifested." "But how? Why like this?" Inko whispered, unable to reconcile the monster before her with her gentle boy. "I don't know," Hisashi admitted, "but we need to calm him down before." A flash of light from the nearby road interrupted him. Headlights. Another family of campers had heard the commotion and was coming to investigate. "Izuku, you need to change back," Hisashi urged. "Can you do that? Can you control it?" Panic filled the young kaiju's eyes. "I don't know how." He backed away, stumbling into a tree that cracked under his weight. The approaching headlights seemed to terrify him further. With a frightened roar, he turned and bolted into the forest, moving with surprising speed for his size. "Izuku, wait," Inko cried, but he was already disappearing into the darkness. Hisashi grabbed a flashlight. "Stay here in case he comes back. I'll go after him." Hours later, after a frantic search through the woods, Hisashi found his son huddled in a small ravine. He was human again, small and vulnerable, his clothes torn and his body covered in dirt and scratches. The boy was sobbing uncontrollably. "Dad," he hiccuped as Hisashi gathered him in his arms, "I turned into a monster." "Not a monster," Hisashi corrected gently, though his voice betrayed his uncertainty. "A quirk, a very powerful quirk." "But I was so big and scary," Izuku whispered. Hisashi carried his son back toward their ruined campsite, trying to project a confidence he didn't feel. "Some of the best heroes have scary quirks, Izuku. What matters is how you use it." But as they walked, Hisashi's mind raced with fear. This was no ordinary quirk. The transformation had been too complete, too alien, and the timing was wrong. Quirks typically manifested gradually around age 4, not in explosive midnight transformations. Something else was happening to his son, and he had no idea what it meant. What they didn't realize was that deep within Izuku's cells, the alien presence was already adapting, integrating itself with his human DNA, and it was beginning to wake up. The next few years were a nightmare for the Midoriya family. Izuku's transformations came unpredictably, often triggered by strong emotions, fear, anger, excitement. Each time he grew slightly larger, his kaiju form developing new features. Bony spines along his back, armored plates on his chest, a stronger and more lethal tail. When he was 5, a transformation destroyed half their apartment building. No one was hurt, but the family was forced to move, claiming a gas explosion to hide the truth. They relocated to the outskirts of Musutafu, where Hisashi purchased a small, isolated house with savings he'd been keeping for Izuku's college education. "We need the space and privacy," he explained to Inko, "until he learns control." By age 6, Izuku could reach nearly 12 feet in his transformed state. The family registered his quirk as Titan Transformation, deliberately understating its power. Quirk counselors were useless, having never seen anything like it. One specialist suggested medication to suppress the transformations, but the pills made Izuku violently ill. It was around this time that Dr. Kyudai Garaki, a respected quirk researcher, approached the family, having heard rumors of an unusual transformation quirk through his medical connections. "I specialize in unique manifestations," he told them, adjusting his round glasses as he sat in their living room. "Your son's case sounds fascinating." Inko hesitated. "We've already seen several specialists. With all due respect, Mrs. Midoriya, I doubt they had my expertise." Garaki smiled, but something in his expression made Izuku shrink behind his mother. "Perhaps a demonstration?" "Absolutely not," Hisashi said firmly. "His transformations are still unpredictable. It's not safe." Dr. Garaki seemed disappointed, but didn't press the issue. "At least allow me to take some blood samples. Nothing invasive." The tests were performed, but when Dr. Garaki returned a week later, he seemed troubled. "The results are inconclusive," he admitted. "His DNA shows unusual patterns I've never encountered. I'd like to perform more comprehensive testing." Something in the doctor's too eager expression made Hisashi uneasy. "We appreciate your help, doctor, but we've decided to pursue a different approach for now." After Garaki left, Hisashi locked the door and turned to his wife. I don't trust him. There was something off about his interest in Izuku. What do we do then? Inko asked, watching their son play with his All Might action figures, seemingly ordinary in that moment. We can't keep living like this, waiting for the next disaster. That night, after Izuku was asleep, Hisashi made a decision. I'm staying, he told Inko. I'll cancel my overseas contracts. Izuku needs both of us right now. In the darkness of his room, Izuku lay awake, listening to his parents' worried voices through the wall. He didn't mean to be a burden. He didn't want to be different. He just wanted to be a hero like All Might. Strong, reliable, someone who saved people with a smile. But how could he save anyone when he couldn't even control his own body? You can. The voice in his head was so clear that Izuku sat bolt upright, looking around his empty room. Hello, he whispered. I am here, within you. Izuku clutched his All Might plushie tighter. Who are you? I am part of you now. You may call me Zenith. Are you my quirk? Izuku asked, his 7-year-old mind struggling to understand. No, I am not of your world. I am the last of my kind, seeking refuge. You are my host. Like a parasite, Izuku had learned that word recently and it frightened him. No, a symbiote. We help each other. Your body shelters me. I give you strength. But I can't control it, Izuku whispered. I hurt things. I scare people. You are young. Control will come with practice. I chose you because your heart is pure. You wish to protect, not destroy. Tears welled in Izuku's eyes. I just want to be normal. You were never meant to be normal, Izuku Midoriya. You were meant to be extraordinary. The voice faded, leaving Izuku alone with his thoughts. He didn't tell his parents about Zenith. Not yet. Something told him they wouldn't understand. Instead, he began to focus inward, trying to feel the presence inside him, to understand it better. 3 nights later, when he transformed during a nightmare, he maintained consciousness throughout the entire process. For the first time, he could feel his body changing, muscles expanding, bones lengthening, skin hardening into scales. It was terrifying, but also exhilarating. Control your breathing, Zenith instructed. Feel the power flowing through you, but do not let it control you. Izuku stood in his reinforced bedroom. Hisashi had installed steel support beams after the 3rd time he destroyed the walls, examining his transformed hands. They were powerful, but also articulate, capable of delicate movement despite their size. Try to change back, Zenith suggested. Visualize your human form. Izuku closed his eyes, picturing himself as human. He felt a strange, tingling sensation, and when he opened his eyes again, he was looking at his normal hands. He'd done it. He'd transformed back voluntarily. Racing to his parents' room, he woke them with his excited shouts. Mom! Dad! I did it! I changed back by myself. The look of pride and relief on their faces was worth everything. From that night forward, Izuku began to train. With Zenith's guidance and his father's help, he learned to control his transformations. Hisashi found an abandoned warehouse in an industrial district where Izuku could practice without fear of being discovered. Weekends were spent there, Hisashi using his fire-breathing quirk to create targets for Izuku to destroy in his kaiju form. By age 10, Izuku could transform at will, maintaining his kaiju state for up to 30 minutes before exhaustion set in. He discovered he could partially transform as well, changing just an arm or a leg while keeping the rest of his body human. This proved especially useful as it attracted less attention. Hisashi created a makeshift lab in their basement, monitoring Izuku's vital signs during transformations and documenting his growing abilities. Together, father and son filled notebooks with observations, theories, and training exercises. Inko supported them by researching nutrition that might help Izuku's body handle the strain of transformation. The family grew closer through their shared secret, but school remained difficult. Izuku couldn't reveal his true abilities, so he was still perceived as quirkless by his classmates. The bullying, led by his former friend Katsuki Bakugo, continued unabated. Still dreaming about UA Deku, Katsuki sneered one day after class. Quirkless losers should know their place. For a moment, Izuku felt his arm begin to transform in response to his anger. Scales rippled beneath his skin, his fingers elongating into claws. He quickly shoved his hand into his pocket. Careful, Zenith warned. He is not worth revealing yourself. I'll get in somehow, Kachan, Izuku said quietly. I promise. Katsuki's explosive quirk crackled in his palm. Big talk from someone who can't even defend himself. As Katsuki and his friends walked away laughing, Izuku felt a strange mix of frustration and amusement. If only they knew. The boy they mocked as powerless could level the entire school with a single transformation. But that wasn't the kind of hero he wanted to be. That evening, as he trained in the warehouse, smashing concrete blocks with his kaiju fists, Izuku confronted Zenith about his reluctance to reveal himself. Why hide my power? I could stop the bullying instantly. And then what? Zenith responded. Become feared instead of mocked? Trading one isolation for another, Izuku hesitated, then punched through another concrete block. But isn't it dishonest, pretending to be powerless when I'm not? There is a difference between deception and discretion. The world is not ready to know what you are. Not yet. What am I? Izuku asked, the question that had haunted him for years. You are becoming, Zenith replied cryptically, neither fully human nor fully alien. Something new. Something with the potential for greatness or destruction. I choose greatness, Izuku decided, shifting back to his human form as exhaustion overtook him. I choose to be a hero. Then we will become a hero together, Zenith agreed. By 14, Izuku had mastered his transformations. His kaiju form now stood nearly 20 feet tall, with armored scales that could withstand small arms fire, tested carefully by Hisashi in the warehouse using increasingly powerful rifles. He could project concussive energy blasts from his mouth, a power that had manifested unexpectedly during a particularly intense training session. His regenerative abilities were remarkable, healing injuries in his human form within hours that would take others weeks to recover from. Most importantly, he had learned restraint. He could fight at reduced power, using just enough force to subdue without causing permanent harm. His analytical mind, already sharp from years of quirk observation, had become exceptional at calculating the precise amount of strength needed for any situation. It was around this time that the rumors began, stories of a guardian monster that occasionally appeared during natural disasters or villain attacks, helping from the shadows before disappearing. Izuku had begun testing his abilities in the real world, careful to operate at night or in remote areas, never letting himself be clearly seen or photographed. After rescuing 3 children from a burning building too dangerous for regular heroes to enter, Izuku found himself mentioned on the local news. Witnesses describe a large reptilian figure carrying the children to safety, the reporter said. Authorities are investigating whether this was a previously unknown pro-hero or possibly a vigilante with a transformation quirk. Hisashi turned off the TV with a frown. You're taking too many risks, Izuku. I was careful, Izuku protested. No one got a clear look at me. That's not the point. Hisashi ran a hand through his hair, now streaked with premature gray. What if you had been caught? Or hurt? Or worse, what if you had hurt someone by accident? Izuku looked down at his hands. I have control now. You know I do. Control isn't perfect, Hisashi insisted. One mistake, one moment of panic, and you could. Hisashi, Inko interrupted gently. He saved 3 children. The room fell silent. Finally, Hisashi sighed. I'm proud of you, son. I just worry. I know, Dad. Izuku smiled. But I can't just sit back when I have the power to help. That's not what heroes do. That night, as Izuku updated his hero analysis notebook, he paused on a page dedicated to All Might. The symbol of peace remained his idol, the hero whose smile promised everything would be all right. But Izuku had begun to carve his own path. Perhaps he couldn't be the same kind of symbol as All Might, but he could be something equally valuable. A guardian, a protector. 9 months until the UA entrance exam, he thought. Time to prepare. His training intensified. Hisashi helped him develop special exercises to increase his stamina in both forms. Inko created high-calorie meals to fuel his body's enormous energy needs. Zenith taught him to access new abilities, enhanced senses that could detect threats from miles away, the power to partially liquefy his cellular structure to squeeze through tight spaces, limited telepathic communication with other complex organisms. When the day of the entrance exam finally arrived, Izuku stood before the gates of UA, a mix of determination and nervousness churning in his stomach. You've got this, Hisashi had told him that morning. Just remember, restraint above all. As Izuku walked toward the entrance, he stumbled, nearly falling face first onto the pavement. Before he could catch himself, he felt someone grab his arm. "Are you okay?" a friendly female voice asked. Izuku turned to see a girl with rosy cheeks and a kind smile. "I'm fine. Thank you for catching me." "No problem. Guess we're all nervous, huh?" "I'm Ochako Uraraka." "Izuku Midoriya," he replied, surprised by how easily the conversation flowed. Most people at his junior high had avoided him, sensing something different about him even if they couldn't identify what. "Nice to meet you, Midoriya. Maybe we'll both make it in." She gave him an encouraging smile before continuing toward the building. "She seems nice," Zenith observed. "Yeah," Izuku agreed, watching her walk away. "She does." The written exam was challenging but manageable. Izuku had always been a strong student, and years of analytical training had sharpened his mind further. The practical exam, however, would be the real test. Present Mike's explanation of the battle trial was straightforward. Destroy robots, earn points, avoid the zero-pointer. As Izuku listened, he calculated how much of his power he could safely use without raising too many questions. Partial transformations only, he decided. No energy blasts unless absolutely necessary. When the exam began, chaos erupted as students scattered throughout the mock city. Izuku ran deeper into the testing ground, away from the main group. Once relatively isolated, he allowed his right arm to transform, scales rippling across his skin as his hand elongated into powerful claws. A one-pointer robot rounded the corner, sensors locking onto him. Izuku leapt forward with enhanced strength, his transformed arm tearing through the machine's metal chassis like paper. The robot collapsed in a shower of sparks. One down, he thought, continuing forward. He maintained his strategy, partial transformations, quick takedowns, avoiding other examinees. By the 7-minute mark, he had accumulated 68 points, moving so quickly between targets that few people caught more than glimpses of him. Then came the zero-pointer, a colossal robot that towered over the buildings, causing examinees to flee in terror. Izuku was about to join the retreat when he heard a cry of pain. Looking back, he saw Uraraka pinned beneath debris directly in the robot's path. Without hesitation, Izuku ran toward her, calculating his options. A partial transformation wouldn't be enough to stop something that size. He needed more power. Full transformation? He asked Zenith. It would reveal much, the symbiote cautioned. But yes, it appears necessary. Izuku took a deep breath, then let the change overtake him. His body expanded rapidly, clothes tearing as scales covered his skin. His face elongated into a reptilian muzzle, spines erupting along his back. Within seconds, where a teenage boy had stood, there was now a 20-foot kaiju, emerald eyes gleaming with intelligence. The transformation caused everyone nearby to freeze in shock. Even the zero-pointer seemed to pause its advance. With a roar that shook the windows of nearby buildings, Izuku charged the massive robot. His clawed fist smashed into its leg joints, buckling the metal. The robot tried to counter, swinging a massive arm toward him, but Izuku caught it, muscles straining as he held the mechanical limb at bay. "More power," he urged Zenith. "Be careful," the symbiote warned. "There are witnesses." Izuku opened his jaws, energy gathering in the back of his throat. A concentrated beam of blue-green light erupted, slicing through the robot's chest. The zero-pointer shuddered, then collapsed backward, away from Uraraka and the other examinees. The testing ground fell silent. Dozens of students stared in awe and fear at the kaiju standing amid the robot's smoking remains. Izuku turned, meeting their gazes with his transformed eyes, seeing the mixture of terror and amazement on their faces. Then he moved toward Uraraka, who flinched as he approached. Carefully, gently, he lifted the debris, pinning her legs, tossing it aside. He crouched, bringing his massive head down to her level. Are you okay?" he asked, his voice a deep rumble. Uraraka's eyes widened in recognition. "Midoriya? That's you?" Before he could respond, Present Mike's voice boomed through the speakers. "Time's up." Recovery Girl arrived moments later, surveying the scene with professional calm despite the presence of a kaiju among the examinees. My, she said, approaching Izuku without apparent fear. "That's quite a transformation quirk, young man." Izuku nodded, then concentrated on returning to human form. The change reversed itself, scales receding, body shrinking until he stood before them in the tattered remains of his exam clothes. Fortunately, he'd worn compression shorts beneath his pants, preserving some modesty. "Sorry about that," he said, suddenly self-conscious under the staring eyes of his fellow examinees. "I didn't mean to scare anyone." Recovery Girl handed him a UA tracksuit. "Here you go, dear. Can't have you catching cold." As he gratefully pulled it on, she turned to Uraraka. "Now let me see those injuries." As Recovery Girl treated Uraraka, the other students kept their distance from Izuku, whispering among themselves. He caught fragments of their conversations. "Did you see that? At least 15, maybe 20 feet tall. Tore through that 0-pointer like it was nothing. Some kind of monster quirk." Present Mike approached, his usual bombastic persona subdued for once. "That was quite a show, listener," he said to Izuku. "I've been doing this exam for years and I've never seen anything like it." "I'm sorry if I broke any rules," Izuku said quickly. "I was just trying to help." Present Mike shook his head. "No rules against using your full power, though a heads up about the scale of your transformation might have been nice." He glanced at the destroyed 0-pointer. "We usually recycle those." Later, as Izuku walked home, he replayed the exam in his mind. He had revealed his full form sooner than planned, but it had been necessary. Still, the looks on the other students' faces haunted him. Fear. Awe. Suspicion. "It begins," Zenith said quietly, "the journey of the monster hero." "I'm not a monster," Izuku thought automatically. "No," Zenith agreed. "But neither are you simply human anymore. You exist between worlds, Izuku Midoriya. That will always set you apart." When he arrived home, his parents were waiting anxiously. "How did it go?" Inko asked. Izuku took a deep breath. "I had to transform, fully." Hisashi's expression tightened. "Was anyone hurt?" "No. I saved someone. But everyone saw me." Izuku sank onto the couch. "If I get in, they'll all know what I am." Inko sat beside him, taking his hand. "They'll know you're powerful. They'll know you're a hero who saves people. The rest," she squeezed his fingers. "The rest, they'll learn over time." The acceptance letter arrived a week later. Principal Nezu himself had recorded the holographic message, explaining that Izuku had not only scored highest in villain points, but had also earned a substantial number of rescue points for saving Uraraka. "Your power is remarkable," the principal said, his intelligent eyes studying Izuku through the hologram. "We at UA pride ourselves on helping students with exceptional quirks reach their full potential. We look forward to seeing what you will become, Midoriya-kun." There was a pause, then Nezu added, "Incidentally, I'd like to schedule a private meeting before classes begin. There are certain aspects of your abilities I'd like to discuss." Izuku's stomach tightened. Somehow, the principal suspected there was more to his power than a simple transformation quirk. The meeting took place 3 days before the start of term. Principal Nezu welcomed Izuku and his parents into his office, serving tea with impeccable manners. "I'll be direct," Nezu said once they were settled. "Your son's quirk registration lists Titan transformation with a standard power rating, but what I witnessed in that exam footage was something else entirely." Hisashi tensed. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Nezu said, setting down his teacup, "that I've studied mutation and transformation quirks extensively. What your son exhibited shows biological structures that don't conform to any known quirk pattern." His beady eyes fixed on Izuku. "Would you like to tell me what you really are, Midoriya-kun?" The room fell silent. Izuku glanced at his parents, then back at Nezu. There was no point hiding the truth from someone so perceptive. "I'm not entirely human," he admitted. "Not anymore." Over the next hour, Izuku explained everything: the meteorite, Zenith, the years of training. Nezu listened without interruption, occasionally nodding as if confirming private theories. "Fascinating," he said when Izuku finished. "An extraterrestrial symbiotic organism. The scientific implications alone are staggering." "Are you going to report this?" Hisashi asked, his voice tight with concern. Nezu shook his head. "No. Your son's situation falls under my purview as an educator for exceptional individuals. I was not born human either, you know?" He gestured to his unusual appearance. "The result of human experimentation in my case, rather than alien symbiosis, but I understand what it means to exist between categories." Relief washed over Izuku. "So I can still attend UA?" "Of course. In fact, I'm even more convinced of your potential now." Nezu smiled. "But I would like to propose regular monitoring sessions. Not as a restriction, but to help you develop your unique abilities safely." "That sounds reasonable," Inko said, the tension leaving her shoulders. "Excellent." Nezu refilled their teacups. "Now let's discuss how to handle your classmates. The truth about Zenith should remain confidential for now, but we'll need a consistent explanation for your transformation abilities. They settled on a carefully crafted narrative. Izuku's quirk allowed him to transform into a kaiju-like state with enhanced physical abilities and energy projection. The full extent of his powers, the alien consciousness, the regeneration, the sensory capabilities, would remain secret except to essential UA staff. Remember, Nezu cautioned as they prepared to leave, extraordinary power invites extraordinary scrutiny. Be careful who you trust with your complete truth, Midoriya-kun. Izuku nodded, understanding the weight of the principal's words. As much as he wanted to be open and honest with his future classmates, some secrets were safer kept hidden. On the first day of school, Izuku arrived early, trying to avoid the stares that had followed him throughout the entrance ceremony. His classmates had watched him with a mixture of curiosity and wariness, whispering behind their hands. The Kaiju Kid had already become something of a legend at UA. He was the first to enter Class 1A, choosing a seat in the middle of the room, not hiding in the back, but not drawing attention at the front either. Gradually, other students filtered in. A few nodded in his direction, others pretended not to notice him, and some openly stared. Katsuki Bakugo's entrance changed the atmosphere instantly. He stopped in the doorway, his red eyes locking onto Izuku with disbelief and fury. "Deku?" he snarled. "What the hell are you doing here?" Izuku met his gaze steadily. "The same as you, Kachan. I passed the entrance exam." "Bullshit." Katsuki stormed over to Izuku's desk. "You're quirkless. You've always been quirkless." The room fell silent as everyone watched the confrontation. Izuku sighed. "I never said I was quirkless, Kachan. You assumed that because I never used my quirk." "Then what was all that crap about following me to UA, acting like some weakling with a dream?" Sparks popped from Katsuki's palms. "I wasn't acting," Izuku said quietly. "I was hiding what I am. There's a difference." Something in his tone made Katsuki hesitate. Before he could respond, the classroom door slid open again, and their homeroom teacher entered. Shota Aizawa looked around the room with tired eyes. "If you're here to make friends, you're in the wrong place," he said. "This is the hero course." His gaze settled on Katsuki, still standing over Izuku's desk. "Sit down. Save the playground disputes for your own time." Katsuki glared at Izuku once more before taking his seat, his expression promising that the conversation wasn't over. Aizawa wasted no time in getting to business, announcing a quirk assessment test that would push them to their limits, with the threat of expulsion for whoever placed last. At the training ground, Izuku carefully planned his approach. Full transformation was unnecessary and would likely destroy the equipment. Instead, he used partial transformations. His arm for the ball throw, his legs for the long jump and sprints. The results were impressive without being overwhelming. Third in the 50-meter dash, second in grip strength, first in the ball throw with a distance that shattered Katsuki's impressive score. When Aizawa announced the results, Izuku had placed second overall, behind only Momo Yaoyorozu, whose versatile creation quirk had proven perfect for the technical challenges. "Nobody's being expelled," Aizawa revealed, confirming it had been a logical ruse to draw out their full potential. "Now get changed and head back to class." In the locker room, the boys kept a noticeable distance from Izuku as they changed, all except Eijiro Kirishima, who approached with an enthusiastic grin. "Dude, your quirk is seriously manly," he exclaimed. "I saw you during the entrance exam. That full transformation was intense." "Thanks," Izuku replied, surprised by the friendly overture. "Your hardening quirk is pretty amazing too. Nowhere near as powerful as turning into a giant monster, but it gets the job done." Kirishima flexed his arm, demonstrating his quirk. "Hey, some of us were wondering, what does it feel like? The transformation, I mean." Izuku considered the question as he pulled on his uniform shirt. "It's like suddenly having a much larger body. Everything feels stronger, sharper. My senses become enhanced. I can hear heartbeats, smell emotions." "You can smell emotions?" Denki Kaminari asked, edging closer despite his apparent nervousness. Izuku nodded. "Fear has a distinct scent. So does excitement." He glanced around, aware that everyone was listening now. "Right now, most of you are giving off anxiety mixed with curiosity. Can you control it completely?" Tenya Ida asked, adjusting his glasses. "The transformation, I mean." "Yes," Izuku assured him. "I've had my quirk since I was 4. I've had a lot of practice." This wasn't entirely true. His powers had manifested at 4, but control had come much later. But it seemed to reassure his classmates. All except Katsuki, who slammed his locker shut and stormed out without a word. Later that day, as classes ended, Katsuki cornered Izuku in a deserted corridor. "Explain," he demanded, blocking Izuku's path. "All these years, you let me think you were quirkless." Izuku sighed. "Would you have believed me if I told you the truth? That I could transform into something that could crush you with one hand? Prove it," Katsuki challenged. "Right now." "I'm not going to transform in the school hallway, Kachan. Scared I'll see it's all exaggerated? That you're still the same useless Deku?" Izuku felt Zenith stir within him, responding to his rising irritation. Carefully, he allowed a small demonstration, his eyes shifting to their kaiju form, vertical pupils glowing green against black sclera. The scales that rippled across his cheeks and down his neck shimmered faintly in the hallway light. Katsuki took an involuntary step back, his eyes widening. "I'm not useless," Izuku said, his voice deepening slightly. "I never was." He let his features return to normal. "But I'm not your enemy either, Kachan. I never wanted to compete with you. I just wanted to be a hero." For once, Katsuki seemed at a loss for words. Finally, he shoved his hands in his pockets. "This isn't over, Deku," he muttered, but the usual venom was missing from his voice. As Katsuki walked away, Izuku felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that the confrontation hadn't escalated, sadness for the friendship they'd lost long ago, and hope that perhaps, with time, they might find a new understanding. "He is struggling with his worldview," Zenith observed. "For years, his perception of you shaped his self-image. Now that perception is shattered. He'll adjust," Izuku thought. Kachan is nothing if not adaptable. The first few weeks at UA established a pattern. In class, Izuku excelled academically, his analytical mind absorbing hero theory and quirk science with ease. In practical training, he carefully calibrated his performance. Impressive enough to be taken seriously, but restrained enough to avoid overwhelming his classmates or raising too many questions. All Might's first class brought a new challenge, combat training. Paired against Katsuki and Tenya in the indoor battle trial, with Ochako as his partner, Izuku faced his first real fight against someone who knew him and who had years of resentment fueling his attacks. "I've got a bone to pick with you, Deku," Katsuki growled as they faced off inside the building, Ochako having gone ahead to secure the objective. "All these years, looking down on me while hiding what you really are." "I never looked down on you, Kachan," Izuku replied, dodging an explosion. "I admired you. I still do." "Shut up." Katsuki launched himself forward with an explosive burst, his right hook aimed at Izuku's face. "You don't get to admire me. Not when you've been lying to my face since we were kids." Izuku blocked the punch, his arm partially transformed beneath his costume sleeve. The scales absorbed the impact and heat of Katsuki's explosion. "I didn't lie," Izuku said, pushing Katsuki back. "I just didn't show you everything." "Show me now," Katsuki demanded, unleashing a barrage of explosions. "Stop holding back, or are you still looking down on me?" Something in Katsuki's voice, the raw hurt beneath the anger, made Izuku pause. He realized that what Katsuki wanted wasn't just a fight, it was validation. Acknowledgement. "All right," Izuku said quietly. "A partial transformation. No holding back. But not here. There's not enough room, and I don't want to destroy the building with Uraraka and Ida still inside." They moved to a larger open area within the building. Izuku took a deep breath, then allowed the transformation to flow through his upper body. His torso expanded, tearing through his costume to reveal armored scales. His arms lengthened, muscles bulging as claws extended from his fingertips. His head remained human, though his eyes shifted to their reptilian form. "This is part of what I am," Izuku said, his voice deeper than normal. "Not even close to my full transformation." Katsuki stared, his expression a mixture of shock, anger, and something else, perhaps a reluctant respect. "All this time," he murmured, "you could have destroyed me any time you wanted." "That was never what I wanted, Kachan." Without warning, Katsuki attacked, unleashing his most powerful explosion directly at Izuku's transformed chest. The blast echoed through the building, smoke obscuring their figures for a moment. When it cleared, Izuku stood unharmed, the scales on his chest glowing faintly from absorbed heat. "My turn," Izuku said, moving with a speed that belied his increased mass. His clawed hand grabbed Katsuki's arm, careful not to pierce the skin, and pinned him against the wall. I could end this fight right now, but that's not the point, is it? Katsuki struggled against his grip, but it was like fighting against steel. What the hell is the point then? He snarled. We're both here to become heroes, Izuku said, loosening his hold. Different kinds, maybe, but with the same goal. I never wanted to be your rival, Kachan. I wanted to be your equal. Something in Katsuki's expression shifted. The fury didn't disappear, but it softened, complicated by confusion and reluctant understanding. Before he could respond, All Might's voice boomed through their earpieces. Young Uraraka has secured the weapon. Hero team wins. Izuku released Katsuki and stepped back, his body returning to human form. His costume hung in tatters from his upper body, revealing the lean muscle beneath. Next time, Katsuki said, his voice low and intense, I'll find a way to beat you. Quirk or no quirk? Izuku nodded. I wouldn't expect anything less. As they exited the building for the post-exercise review, Izuku felt a subtle shift in their relationship. The childhood bullying dynamic had been shattered. Whatever came next between them would be something new. Not friendship, perhaps, but a more honest rivalry built on mutual acknowledgement. The combat exercise changed how Class 1A viewed Izuku. His restraint during the fight with Katsuki, despite his obvious power advantage, earned him respect. His classmates began to approach him more freely, curiosity overcoming their initial wariness. Your transformation is fascinating from a biological perspective, Momo commented during lunch one day. The energy requirements must be enormous. They are, Izuku confirmed. I eat about 5 times what a normal person does. That explains the bento boxes, Tsuyu Asui noted, eyeing the stack of containers Izuku had brought. Ribbit. 2 days later, Izuku experienced his first true test as a hero in training during what should have been a routine field trip. Class 1A was visiting the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, USJ, a massive facility designed to train heroes for various disaster scenarios under the guidance of the space hero 13. As 13 delivered a speech about the responsible use of quirks, emphasizing how powers designed for destruction could also be used to save lives, Izuku felt a sudden spike of alarm from Zenith. Danger approaching, the alien consciousness warned. Many presences. Hostile intent. Izuku stiffened, scanning the facility with heightened senses. At the central plaza below, a swirling mass of dark purple mist was materializing. Everyone, he called out, interrupting 13. Something's coming. Aizawa turned sharply toward Izuku, then followed his gaze to the plaza. The mist expanded and figures began stepping through, dozens of them. Their appearances varied, but their intentions clear from their aggressive stances and weaponry. Those are villains, Aizawa stated, pulling his capture scarf tight. 13, protect the students. I'll handle this. Wait, Aizawa-sensei. Izuku stepped forward. There are too many of them, and... He hesitated, not wanting to reveal how he knew, but needing to warn his teacher. And I think there's something really dangerous down there, something big. Aizawa glanced at Izuku, his expression unreadable behind his goggles. Your quirk gives you enhanced senses too? Something like that? Stay here. That's an order. With that, Aizawa leapt down to engage the villains, his erasure quirk and combat skills allowing him to take on multiple opponents at once. But Izuku could sense what Aizawa couldn't see yet. A massive presence lurking at the back of the villain group. Its energy signature unlike anything he'd encountered before. And next to it, a wiry, blue-haired man with hands attached to his body, who appeared to be giving orders. We need to evacuate, 13 instructed, guiding the students toward the exit. But before they could reach it, the same purple mist materialized directly in their path, coalescing into a humanoid figure with glowing yellow eyes. Greetings, the mist villain said, his voice eerily polite. We are the League of Villains. Forgive our audacity, but today we've come to UACI High School, this bastion of heroism, to end the life of All Might, the symbol of peace. As the villain spoke, Izuku felt Zenith's consciousness surge forward, more alert than he'd ever sensed before. That one, Zenith's voice was urgent in Izuku's mind. Not human. Not entirely. Quirk has altered his fundamental structure, but it appears All Might is not present, the mist villain continued. Was there a change in schedule? Well, no matter. My role remains the same. The mist expanded suddenly, engulfing several students before they could react. Izuku felt the warping effect begin to pull at him and made a split-second decision. Instead of resisting, he allowed a partial transformation of his arms, using their enhanced strength to grab onto Uraraka and Ida, who were closest to him. "Hold on," he shouted as the mist surrounded them completely. He felt the disorienting sensation of being transported, but maintained his grip on his classmates. When the mist cleared, they found themselves in the flood zone of the USJ, a section designed to simulate water rescues, now filling with villains specialized for aquatic combat. "Midoriya, you saved us!" Uraraka exclaimed as they splashed into the water. "Not yet," Izuku replied grimly, seeing villains approaching through the water. "Ida, your engines don't work well in water, right? And Uraraka, your zero gravity would be hard to use effectively here." "Correct," Ida confirmed, trying to maintain his position while water filled his engines. "This environment severely hampers my abilities." "Then let me handle this," Izuku said, allowing his transformation to progress further. His body grew, scales spreading across his skin as he positioned himself between his classmates and the approaching villains. "Get to the edge of the zone. I'll keep them busy." "But Midoriya..." Uraraka began to protest. "Go!" Izuku's voice had deepened with his transformation, carrying the dual tones of both his human voice and Zenith's alien resonance. "I'll be right behind you." As his classmates made their way toward the shore, Izuku turned to face the villains. In water, many of his disadvantages were neutralized. His increased mass was offset by buoyancy, and the liquid environment actually enhanced his kaiju form's natural swimming adaptations. The villains, expecting easy prey, found themselves facing a nightmare. A half-transformed teenager whose glowing eyes pierced the water and whose clawed hands moved with lethal precision. Izuku didn't need to fully transform to handle these opponents. Precise strikes to pressure points and careful use of his enhanced strength were enough to neutralize them without causing permanent harm. Once Ida and Uraraka reached safety, Izuku swam after them, transforming back to his human form as he climbed onto the shore. "We need to regroup with the others," he said, water streaming from his uniform. "And Aizawa-sensei needs backup. There's something down there he can't handle alone." "You mean the large villain with the exposed brain?" Ida asked. "I caught a glimpse of it before we were warped away. It appeared most formidable." Izuku nodded grimly. "That's the one. And it's not a normal human with a quirk. There's something wrong about it. Its energy signature feels manufactured." "Energy signature?" Uraraka questioned, wringing water from her uniform. "Deku, what exactly can your quirk do?" "I'll explain later," Izuku promised, already moving toward the central plaza where Aizawa was fighting. "Right now, we need to help our teacher." They arrived at the plaza's edge just in time to witness a horrifying sight. Aizawa, despite his impressive combat skills, had been overwhelmed by sheer numbers, and now he was pinned beneath the massive villain Izuku had sensed earlier, a hulking, muscular creature with exposed brain tissue and a beak-like mouth. "That's a Nomu," the blue-haired villain announced, scratching his neck compulsively as he watched Aizawa struggle. "Bioengineered to kill all might. Your erasure quirk is impressive, Eraserhead, but against pure strength, it's useless." As if to demonstrate this point, the Nomu slammed Aizawa's head into the concrete, fracturing it with the force of the impact. Blood pooled beneath the hero as the creature prepared to strike again. "No!" Izuku shouted, his body reacting before his mind could catch up. In an instant, he was transforming, his body expanding rapidly into his full kaiju form, 16 feet tall and radiating power. The transformation was so fast and complete that Uraraka and Ida stumbled back in shock, having never seen him shift so dramatically before. With speed that belied his massive size, Izuku crossed the distance to the Nomu, his transformed fist connecting with the creature's torso with enough force to send it flying away from Aizawa's prone form. The blue-haired villain barely had time to leap back, avoiding being caught in the impact. "What the hell?" the villain exclaimed, his red eyes widening behind the hand covering his face. "The file didn't mention a kaiju student. Kurogiri, why wasn't I informed about this?" The mist villain materialized beside him. "There was no such information in the UA records we accessed, Shigaraki Tomura." Izuku stood protectively over Aizawa's unconscious form, his transformed body casting a long shadow across the plaza. In this form, he towered over both villains, his scaled skin gleaming under the facility's lights, spines raised along his back in an instinctive display of aggression. "Get Aizawa-sensei to safety," he growled to Ida and Uraraka, who had cautiously approached. His voice in this form was deeper, resonating with a strange harmonic quality that wasn't quite human. "And find help." "I'll go," Ida volunteered immediately. "My engines make me the fastest. Uraraka, can you help move Aizawa-sensei?" "I can use my quirk to make him weightless," she confirmed. "But Deku, what about you? That thing was designed to fight All Might." "I'll hold it off," Izuku replied, his glowing eyes fixed on the Nomu, which was already recovering from his attack, showing no signs of injury despite the tremendous force of the blow. "Go, now." As his classmates carefully moved Aizawa away from the battle zone, Izuku focused entirely on the threat before him. The Nomu charged, moving at incredible speed, its fist aiming directly for Izuku's head. In his kaiju form, Izuku's reflexes were enhanced beyond human limits, allowing him to catch the punch with one massive hand. The impact created a shockwave that rippled through the USJ, cracking the ground beneath their feet. For a moment, they were locked in a test of strength, neither yielding. This creature, Zenith's voice echoed in Izuku's mind, more urgent than he'd ever heard it. Genetically modified. Multiple quirks layered into one body. Similar to techniques from my world, forbidden techniques. "Who created you?" Izuku growled at the Nomu, though he knew the creature probably couldn't answer. Its blank eyes showed no intelligence, only programmed aggression. "Nomu is a masterpiece," Shigaraki called out, watching the battle with childlike fascination. "Designed to counter All Might's every ability. Shock absorption, super strength, super regeneration. It's the perfect anti-symbol of peace weapon. What can a student do against something like that?" In answer, Izuku opened his transformed maw and released a concentrated beam of blue energy directly into the Nomu's chest. The blast tore through the creature's flesh, exposing the cavity beneath. But even as Izuku watched, the wound began to close, regenerating at an impossible rate. Conventional attacks ineffective, Zenith assessed. Need to overwhelm regeneration capacity or target structural weaknesses. Izuku understood immediately. The Nomu's brain was exposed, protected only by what appeared to be a reinforced skull plate. If he could deliver enough concentrated force to that one point. The Nomu attacked again, this time grabbing Izuku's arm and twisting with enough force to break ordinary bones. But Izuku's transformed limbs were anything but ordinary. Instead of resisting, he moved with the motion, using the Nomu's own strength to spin them both around. As they turned, Izuku's free hand transformed further, his claws lengthening and hardening into diamond-sharp points. With precision that came from years of training, he drove these claws directly into the exposed brain tissue of the Nomu. The creature convulsed, its programmed directives momentarily disrupted by the direct neural interference. Taking advantage of this opening, Izuku channeled his energy beam again, not outward through his mouth, but directly through his embedded claws, delivering the energy straight into the Nomu's control center. The Nomu's body seized violently, then went limp, collapsing to the ground with Izuku standing over it, breathing heavily from the exertion. No, that's cheating!" Shigaraki screamed, scratching his neck frantically until it bled. "Nomu was perfect! Perfect! You can't just... Who are you?" Izuku turned toward the villain, his transformed face impossible to read but his intentions clear as he took a step forward. "Someone who protects his teachers and friends," he rumbled, the dual-toned voice echoing across the plaza. "Someone who won't let you hurt anyone else." Shigaraki backed away, real fear visible in the parts of his face not covered by the disembodied hand. "Kurogiri, we need to go. Now! This wasn't in the plan." "Indeed," the mist villain agreed, expanding his warp gate. "Our primary target is absent, and we've encountered unexpected resistance. A tactical retreat is advisable." As the villains began to disappear into the mist, Izuku considered pursuing them. In his current form, he might be able to capture at least one of them. But his responsibility to his injured teacher and fellow students took priority. He allowed the villains to escape, turning his attention instead to checking on the others. As he made his way toward where Uraraka was tending to Aizawa, he gradually reverted to his human form, the transformation receding like a tide until only Izuku Midoriya remained, an ordinary-looking boy with extraordinary abilities. "Is Aizawa-sensei okay?" he asked as he approached. He's badly injured, Uraraka replied, her face pale with concern. But I think he'll survive until help arrives. Ida should have reached the main campus by now. As if on cue, the massive doors of the USJ burst open, and a commanding voice echoed through the facility. Have no fear, for I am here. All Might had arrived, accompanied by several other UA teachers. They quickly secured the facility, apprehending the remaining villains who hadn't escaped with Shigaraki and Kurogiri. Medical help was provided for Aizawa and any injured students, while the police were called to take statements and collect evidence. In the aftermath, Izuku found himself sitting on the steps outside the USJ, wrapped in a shock blanket despite not being physically injured. All Might, in his deflated true form now that the immediate danger had passed, sat beside him. Young Midoriya, he said quietly, ensuring no one else could hear, what you did today was both incredibly brave and incredibly dangerous. Taking on a villain of that caliber, even with your abilities, could have ended very differently. I know, Izuku admitted, but I couldn't just watch Aizawa-sensei be killed, and besides, Zenith and I. He hesitated, then continued in a lower voice. Zenith recognized something about that Nomu. He said it was created using techniques similar to ones from his world, forbidden techniques for combining multiple genetic traits into a single organism. All Might's gaunt face grew even more serious. That confirms some of my worst fears. There's a villain, someone I've fought in the past who has the ability to steal and grant quirks. If he's found a way to combine that ability with knowledge similar to what your friend Zenith possesses, then there could be more Nomus, Izuku finished the thought. Maybe even stronger ones. Precisely. All Might placed a skeletal hand on Izuku's shoulder. Which is why your continued development is more important than ever. The world may need someone with your unique perspective and abilities sooner than I had hoped. As they sat in contemplative silence, Izuku realized how profoundly the day's events had changed things. He had revealed the full extent of his transformation to his classmates. He had fought and defeated a villain specifically engineered to kill the symbol of peace. And he had confirmed that there were threats in this world that might be connected to Zenith's origins, threats that ordinary heroes might not be equipped to face. We are more than ready, Zenith assured him, the alien presence a comforting weight in his mind. Together we will protect this world. Your home, now our home. In the days following the USJ incident, Izuku noticed a shift in how his classmates interacted with him. The full display of his kaiju form, something most of them had only glimpsed in entrance exam footage, had left an indelible impression. Some, like Kirishima and Mina, were openly fascinated, peppering him with questions about how it felt to transform and the limits of his abilities. Others, like Tokoyami and Shoji, seemed to recognize in Izuku a kindred spirit, someone else who wielded a power that might be perceived as monstrous by the uninitiated. Bakugo, surprisingly, had been quieter than usual, watching Izuku with narrowed eyes, but making no antagonistic moves. It was as if seeing Izuku defeat the Nomu had forced him in his understanding of their relative positions. That thing at the USJ, he said abruptly one day as they were changing after hero training. The one with the exposed brain. It was supposed to kill All Might? Izuku nodded, surprised by Bakugo's direct question. That's what the villain said. And you took it down. It wasn't a question, but a statement, delivered with uncharacteristic thoughtfulness. By yourself. I had advantages they weren't expecting, Izuku explained, not wanting Bakugo to think he was showing off. The Nomu was designed to fight All Might, not someone with my particular abilities. It was shock absorption versus my energy beam, different vectors of attack. Bakugo considered this for a moment, then asked the question Izuku had been dreading. Your quirk. It's not just transformation, is it? There's something else going on with you, Deku. Has been since we were kids. Izuku hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Bakugo had been both his childhood friend and his bully, someone who knew him better than most, but had also used that knowledge against him at times. Could he trust Bakugo with the truth about Zenith? He has earned some truth, Zenith suggested. Perhaps not all, but some. You're right, Izuku admitted finally. My quirk is complicated. It's not just transforming my body, it's more like accessing another state of being. There's a connection to something beyond just my own DNA. Bakugo studied him for a long moment, then let out a short, harsh laugh. Always knew you were a freak, Deku. Just didn't realize how much of one. But the words lacked their usual bite, coming across almost as reluctant respect. Whatever. Just don't think this changes anything between us. I'm still going to be the #1 hero. I never doubted that, Kachan, Izuku replied with a small smile. The conversation was interrupted by Kirishima, who burst into the changing room with excitement radiating from his hardened features. Guys, they just announced it. The UA Sports Festival is still on. Even after the USJ attack, they're not canceling it. The UA Sports Festival, one of Japan's most watched sporting events, where Hero Course students showcase their abilities for pro heroes and agencies looking to recruit interns. For first years like Class 1A, it represented their first major opportunity to be noticed by the professional hero world. Is that really a good idea? Izuku wondered aloud. After what just happened, security might be a concern. According to Principal Nezu, they're tripling security measures, Ida explained, adjusting his glasses with precise movements. And it's seen as important to demonstrate that UA remains strong and undeterred by villain attacks. As the class discussed the upcoming festival with growing excitement, Izuku felt a mixture of anticipation and unease. The sports festival would put him on display for the entire nation. His abilities, his transformed state, everything he had worked so hard to control and understand over the years. It would be impossible to hide the true extent of his power in such a venue. You thinking of holding back in the festival, Midoriya? Todoroki asked quietly, appearing beside him with his usual stoic expression. I'm not sure yet, Izuku admitted. My full transformation might be a bit much for a school competition. Todoroki's mismatched eyes studied him with that unsettling intensity. Don't, he said simply. I want to compete against you at your best. Otherwise, what's the point? Without waiting for a response, he walked away, leaving Izuku to ponder his words. In the 2 weeks leading up to the sports festival, Izuku trained with renewed purpose. While his classmates focused on refining their quirks and increasing their stamina, Izuku worked on something more specific, fine-tuning the balance between his human and kaiju aspects. With All Might's permission, he used one of UA's remote training grounds for particularly intensive sessions. Here, he could fully transform without fear of causing damage or frightening bystanders. He practiced maintaining his full kaiju form for extended periods, worked on the precision of his energy beam at various power levels, and refined his ability to transition smoothly between human, partially transformed, and fully transformed states. Young Midoriya, All Might said during one such session, watching as Izuku practiced fighting in his half-transformed state against robot opponents. Have you considered how you want to present yourself to the public during the sports festival? Izuku paused, reverting to his human form as he considered the question. What do you mean exactly? The sports festival will be your debut on the national stage, All Might explained. The image you project there will follow you throughout your hero career. Some students choose to hide their full capabilities for strategic reasons. Others showcase everything they can do to attract attention from specific agencies. Given your unique circumstances, I thought you might want to consider your approach carefully. It was a thoughtful question and one Izuku hadn't fully considered. I don't want to hide what I am, he said slowly, but I also don't want to frighten people unnecessarily. Maybe I should focus on demonstrating control rather than raw power? All Might nodded approvingly. A wise approach. The public needs to see not just what you can do, but how responsibly you can do it. That might be even more important for someone with abilities like yours. Show them monster who chooses to be hero, Zenith suggested. Not hero despite being monster. You're both right, Izuku agreed aloud. I'll show them that power isn't what makes a monster or a hero. It's the choices you make with that power. When the day of the sports festival finally arrived, UA Stadium was packed with spectators, media, and pro heroes from across Japan. The air buzzed with anticipation as the first-year students gathered in the preparation room. Midoriya, Todoroki approached him just before they were called to enter the stadium. The rest of Class 1A quieted, sensing the tension in the dual quirk user's stance. I need to tell you something. What is it, Todoroki? Objectively speaking, I'm stronger than you. Todoroki's declaration was delivered without emotion, as if stating a simple fact. My quirk gives me perfect offensive and defensive capabilities without the drawbacks of your transformation. Izuku blinked, surprised by the directness of the challenge. I'm not sure I agree with that assessment, but I've been watching you, Todoroki continued, cutting him off. You're powerful, maybe more powerful than anyone else in our class, but you hold back. You're careful with your transformation, precise with your energy. I won't have that luxury, so I'm going to defeat you today using only half my power. The room fell completely silent as the implications of Todoroki's statement sank in. Everyone knew about his ice and fire quirk, but they had only ever seen him use the ice side. Todoroki, Izuku said carefully, I don't know what's driving this declaration, but if you're planning to face me, or anyone else here, at half strength, you're making a mistake. We're all giving our best today. That's what the sports festival is about. Todoroki's expression remained impassive. This isn't about the festival. This is about rejecting my father's power and still becoming the best. Watch me prove it today. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving a bewildered Izuku and an uncomfortable silence in his wake. What was that about? Uraraka whispered, sidling up to Izuku. I'm not entirely sure, Izuku admitted, but I think Todoroki has something to prove, to himself more than anyone else. Before they could discuss it further, the call came for the first-year students to enter the stadium. As they walked into the blinding sunlight and the roar of the crowd, Izuku took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. The sports festival brought new challenges. Principal Nezu and Aizawa called Izuku for a private meeting the week before the event. The sports festival will be your first public display, Nezu explained. We needed to discuss parameters. Parameters? Izuku asked. Aizawa nodded. Your full transformation is too powerful for a student competition. It would also likely cause panic among the audience. We're not asking you to hold back entirely, Nezu clarified, but we would like you to limit yourself to partial transformations only. No energy projection, no full kaiju form. Izuku understood their concern. That's reasonable. I was planning to restrain myself anyway. Good, Aizawa said. Remember, this event is watched by heroes and civilians alike. The impression you make here will follow you throughout your career. The day of the sports festival arrived with a buzz of excitement. As Class 1A prepared to enter the stadium, Izuku felt Katsuki's eyes on him. Don't you dare hold back, Deku, Katsuki warned. Not against me. I won't, Izuku promised, but there are rules. I can't fully transform. Katsuki scoffed. Rules, whatever. Just know I'm coming for the top spot, and I don't care what freaky powers you've been hiding. The obstacle course presented the first challenge. Izuku used partial transformations strategically. Kaiju legs for speed and jumping power, enhanced arms to clear obstacles. He placed third behind Shoto Todoroki and Katsuki, deliberately pacing himself to observe his classmates' quirks in action. The cavalry battle proved more complex. Despite his power, many students hesitated to team with him, uncertain how to strategize around his abilities. In the end, he formed a team with Ochako, Mei Hatsume, and Fumikage Tokoyami, an unusual combination that balanced offense and defense. Your dark shadow and my transformations should complement each other, Izuku explained to Tokoyami. I can provide the physical power while you handle ranged attacks. With Ochako's zero gravity making them more maneuverable and Hatsume's support items enhancing their mobility, they secured second place, behind Todoroki's team, but ahead of Katsuki's. The final event was a one-on-one tournament, direct combat that would showcase each student's individual abilities. The matchups were determined by lottery, and Izuku found himself paired against Shinso Hitoshi from General Studies in the first round. Be careful with that one, Ojiro warned Izuku as they prepared for the tournament. He has some kind of mind control quirk. He tried to use it on me during the cavalry battle. Izuku thanked him for the warning, but he wasn't particularly concerned. One advantage of sharing his consciousness with Zenith was a natural resistance to mental quirks. The alien presence provided a buffer against direct mental manipulation. Sure enough, when the match began and Shinso attempted to provoke Izuku into responding verbally, the apparent trigger for his brainwashing quirk, Izuku felt Zenith's consciousness surge forward, intercepting the mental command before it could take hold. Primitive mental attack, Zenith commented dismissively. Our dual consciousness prevents such intrusion. Rather than revealing this advantage, Izuku simply approached Shinso without speaking, partially transforming his arms for enhanced strength. When Shinso realized his quirk wasn't working, he attempted to fight physically, but against even Izuku's minimal transformation, he stood no chance. The match ended quickly, with Izuku careful not to injure his opponent while still demonstrating decisive victory. The tournament progressed through its brackets, with intense matches showcasing the diverse abilities of UA's students. Bakugo fought with explosive ferocity, advancing through his side of the bracket with overwhelming force. Todoroki continued to use only his ice, defeating opponents with calculated precision despite the clear limitation he had placed on himself. Izuku's second match pitted him against Tokoyami, whose dark shadow proved to be a challenging opponent even for Izuku's transformations. The sentient quirk could attack from multiple angles simultaneously, forcing Izuku to defend while looking for openings. Ultimately, Izuku discovered Dark Shadow's weakness to bright light and used a low-powered energy beam to create enough illumination to weaken the quirk, allowing him to secure victory. In the semifinals, Izuku faced Ida, whose engine quirk granted him incredible speed. The match began with Ida using his Recipro Burst technique to blitz Izuku before he could fully transform, landing several solid hits in rapid succession. But Izuku had anticipated this strategy and had preemptively hardened his skin with a subtle partial transformation, reducing the impact of Ida's kicks. When Ida's engine stalled after overuse, Izuku seized the opportunity, transforming his legs for enhanced speed and his arms for strength. With precise movements that showcased his control rather than brute force, he maneuvered Ida to the edge of the ring and pushed him out of bounds. Midoriya advances to the finals, Present Mike announced. We're going to see a clash of titans, folks. Todoroki versus Midoriya. On the other side of the bracket, Todoroki had defeated Bakugo in a match that had left the explosive student furious and the dual quirk user noticeably exhausted. True to his declaration, Todoroki had used only his ice throughout the tournament, but the strain of fighting without his fire side was becoming evident. As Izuku prepared for the final match, All Might visited him in the preparation room. "Young Midoriya," he said, his perpetual smile somehow more serious than usual. "You've done exactly what we discussed, showcasing control and responsibility with your power. But this final match against young Todoroki presents a unique challenge. Because he's limiting himself to half his quirk?" Izuku guessed. All Might nodded. "Precisely. There's clearly something deeper happening with Todoroki, something personal driving his refusal to use his fire side. As a hero, sometimes our greatest service is not defeating an opponent, but helping them overcome their own limitations." Izuku considered this, understanding the implication. "You think I should push him to use his full power, even if it means I might lose? I think you should do what heroes do best, save people, sometimes from themselves." All Might placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. "Whatever you decide, I know you'll make me proud." The final match of the UA Sports Festival drew the fullest attention of the stadium crowd. As Izuku and Todoroki took their positions on the concrete stage, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. "Start!" Midnight, the R-rated hero serving as referee, signaled the beginning of the match. Todoroki opened with a massive ice attack, a glacier that erupted from the ground and rushed toward Izuku with devastating speed. It was larger and more powerful than any ice he had produced in previous matches, clearly intended to end the fight immediately. Rather than dodging or defending, Izuku partially transformed his right arm and punched the oncoming ice directly, shattering it with a single blow that sent crystalline fragments flying across the stage. The impact created a momentary cloud of mist and ice particles through which Izuku walked calmly toward his opponent. "That won't be enough, Todoroki," he called out. "Not if you're still holding back half your power." Todoroki's expression tightened, and he sent another wave of ice, this one lower to the ground and spreading outward to trap Izuku's feet. Izuku transformed his legs in response, the increased strength allowing him to break free easily. "Why are you limiting yourself?" Izuku pressed, continuing to advance despite Todoroki's repeated ice attacks. "Is it because of your father? Are you letting him dictate how you use your quirk?" Todoroki's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in anger. "Don't talk about things you don't understand, Midoriya. he unleashed his largest attack yet, a veritable mountain of ice that threatened to not only engulf Izuku, but potentially spill beyond the boundaries of the stage. This time, Izuku allowed a more complete transformation, his body growing to nearly 12 feet tall, scales covering his skin as he met the ice head-on. With a roar that resonated throughout the stadium, he tore through the frozen barrier, emerging directly in front of a visibly exhausted Todoroki. "I understand more than you think," Izuku said, his transformed voice carrying the now familiar dual tones. "I know what it's like to have a power that feels separate from yourself, something that came from outside that you didn't ask for. But whatever you feel about your father, this quirk is yours now. Your power, your choice how to use it." Todoroki staggered slightly, frost forming on his right side, the physical manifestation of the drawback to overusing only half his quirk. "It's not that simple," he said through chattering teeth. "You don't know what he did, what he put my mother through, what he did to me, all to create his perfect weapon against All Might." "You're right, I don't know the details," Izuku acknowledged, allowing his transformation to recede slightly, maintaining only the increased height and enhanced strength. "But I do know this, by refusing to use your fire, you're not rejecting him. You're limiting yourself. And a hero who isn't willing to use everything they have to save people, that's not really a hero at all, is it?" Something in Todoroki's expression shifted, a conflict visible in his heterochromatic eyes. "Why are you trying to help me? We're opponents. You could win easily if I stay like this." "Because that's what heroes do," Izuku replied simply. "We help people, even our rivals, especially when they're hurting." For a moment, the stadium seemed to hold its breath as Todoroki stood frozen, both literally and figuratively, at a crossroads. Then slowly, flames began to flicker around his left side, small at first but growing steadily until his entire left half was engulfed in brilliant fire, melting the ice that had accumulated on his right. "Thank you, Midoriya," Todoroki said quietly, a ghost of a smile crossing his usually stoic features. "Now let's have a real match." What followed was a spectacle that would be replayed on hero highlight reels for years to come. Todoroki, unleashing his full power for the first time in public, created combinations of ice and fire that demonstrated the true potential of his dual quirk. Massive flame tornadoes funneled through ice structures, creating steam clouds that obscured the field and temperature differentials that generated powerful wind currents. Izuku responded in kind, transforming fully into his kaiju form, 16 feet tall with all the power that entailed. The crowd gasped as the monstrous figure emerged from the steam, glowing eyes piercing through the haze, but their fear quickly turned to awe as they witnessed the precision and control with which Izuku wielded his tremendous strength. The two titans clashed at the center of the stage, fire and ice meeting scaled flesh and alien might. Todoroki's newfound balance allowed him to counter Izuku's physical advantages with environmental control, while Izuku's adaptability kept him competitive against Todoroki's perfect offense-defense combination. When Todoroki created a massive ice ramp and launched a concentrated fire blast along its surface, Izuku countered with his energy beam, the two forces colliding in midair with a concussive blast that shook the stadium. The resulting explosion temporarily blinded the spectators, and when visibility returned, both competitors were still standing, breathing heavily at opposite ends of the severely damaged stage. "This ends now," Todoroki declared, summoning the largest combination attack yet, a swirling vortex of ice and fire that spiraled toward Izuku with unstoppable force. Izuku, recognizing the all-or-nothing nature of this final exchange, channeled his energy into one focused beam, more controlled and precise than any he had demonstrated before. The two attacks met at the center of the stage, creating a cataclysmic reaction that blew both combatants backward. When the dust settled, Izuku found himself teetering at the very edge of the ring, his transformation receding due to exhaustion. Across from him, Todoroki was in a similar state, struggling to maintain consciousness after expending so much energy. With his last reserves of strength, Izuku took a single step forward, ensuring he remained within bounds. Todoroki attempted to do the same, but stumbled, his foot slipping over the line just as his knees gave out. "Todoroki is out of bounds!" Midnight announced, raising her whip. "Midoriya wins the final match in the UA Sports Festival." The crowd erupted in cheers, many standing to applaud the incredible display they had just witnessed. As medical robots came to assist both exhausted competitors, Izuku managed to make his way to Todoroki, extending a hand to help him up. "That was amazing," Izuku said sincerely. "Your full power. It's incredible." Todoroki accepted the hand, rising to his feet with effort. "I still lost." "This time," Izuku acknowledged with a smile. "But now that you're not fighting with one hand tied behind your back, I suspect our next match will go very differently." A small but genuine smile crossed Todoroki's face. "I look forward to it, Midoriya." The award ceremony that followed felt almost surreal to Izuku. Standing on the highest podium, receiving the gold medal from All Might himself, he could hardly believe how far he had come from the frightened child who had first encountered a strange meteorite in the forest all those years ago. "Young Midoriya," All Might said as he placed the medal around Izuku's neck, speaking quietly enough that only they could hear. "You did more than win today. You showed the world what a true hero looks like. Someone who uses their power not just to defeat, but to elevate those around them. I couldn't be prouder." "We have made good first step," Zenith agreed in Izuku's mind. "Shown world that monster can be hero. That power can be controlled, used for good." Looking out at the cheering crowd, Izuku realized something had fundamentally shifted. Where once he had feared public knowledge of his transformation, now he embraced it. The sports festival had been his debut not just as a UA student, but as something new in the hero landscape. Someone who bridged the gap between human and monster, who could stand alongside traditional heroes while offering unique capabilities no one else possessed. The sports festival changed everything for Izuku. What had been rumors about the Kaiju Kid became headline news. UA's monster hero shows restraint and skill. His partial transformations, captured on camera and broadcast nationwide, made him instantly recognizable. Comments on hero forums ranged from excitement about his potential to concern about the destructive nature of his quirk. The morning after the festival, as Izuku prepared for school, his phone buzzed with notifications, friend requests on hero social networks, messages from distant relatives who'd seen him on TV, and an unexpected email from an unfamiliar address. "Impressive performance," it read. "Your control is admirable, but your power signature is unusual. We should talk. Dr. G." Izuku showed the message to his father, who frowned deeply. "Dr. Garaki," he muttered. "He's still interested after all these years." "Should I be worried?" Izuku asked. "Just be cautious," Hisashi advised. "He seemed overly interested in the biological aspects of your quirk. I never trusted his motives." At school, Izuku's classmates congratulated him on his performance, many expressing surprise at his decision to forfeit the final match. "That was some plus-ultra sportsmanship," Kirishima said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Super manly. I didn't know you could transform just parts of your body like that," Tsuyu added. "It's a versatile quirk." Even Katsuki seemed less antagonistic, though he still maintained his distance. When hero internship offers arrived, Izuku was surprised by the volume. Over 40 agencies had expressed interest, including some unexpected names. Most curious was an offer from the Pussycats, a rescue team that rarely took interns. "They specialize in natural disasters," Aizawa explained when Izuku asked about it. "Your strength and durability would be valuable in that context." After careful consideration, Izuku accepted the Pussycats' offer. As much as combat training appealed to him, he knew his true value as a hero lay in rescue operations, where his kaiju form could move debris and navigate hazardous environments that would defeat most heroes. The internship proved transformative. Mandalay, the team's leader, immediately recognized Izuku's potential. "Your quirk is perfect for search and rescue," she told him as they surveyed a simulation of a collapsed building. "But power alone isn't enough. You need precision and awareness." Under her guidance, Izuku learned to use his enhanced senses in rescue scenarios, detecting heartbeats beneath rubble, smelling traces of survivors, using his strength with surgical precision to move debris without causing further collapse. The training took on new urgency when, 3 days into his internship, an earthquake struck a coastal town 80 miles away. The Pussycats were immediately deployed, Izuku accompanying them as a provisional assistant. "Stay close to Ragdoll," Mandalay instructed as they arrived at the disaster site. "Follow her lead and only transform if absolutely necessary." The scene was chaos, buildings reduced to rubble, fires burning unchecked, civilians wandering in shock or trapped beneath debris. Izuku's heart raced as he took it all in, the scale of destruction overwhelming. Calm, Zenith reminded him, focus your senses, find those who need help most urgently. Izuku closed his eyes, letting his enhanced senses expand, heartbeats, dozens of them, beneath the rubble, the smell of blood, fear, smoke. Opening his eyes, he pointed toward a collapsed apartment building. There, he told Ragdoll, at least 6 people alive, second level down. Ragdoll's eyes widened. How can you be so specific? Enhanced senses, Izuku explained simply. Part of my quirk. They worked methodically, Izuku using partial transformations to lift debris while Ragdoll coordinated with other heroes. As they rescued the trapped civilians, Izuku noticed how his kaiju features, the scales, the claws, the inhuman eyes, initially frightened the victims until they realized he was there to help. It's okay, he assured a young girl as he lifted a concrete slab that had pinned her legs. I know I look scary, but I'm a hero in training. The girl studied him with wide eyes, then reached out to touch the scales on his arm. Like a dragon, she whispered. A good dragon. Yeah, Izuku smiled. A good dragon. As the rescue operation continued into the night, Izuku felt something shift in his understanding of his power. For years, he had seen his kaiju form as something to control, to restrain, to hide when possible. But here, amid destruction, it was precisely what was needed. Strength to move what others couldn't. Well, durability to enter spaces too dangerous for most. Senses that could find life where technology failed. The turning point came when they discovered a collapsed school with children trapped in a rapidly flooding basement. The structural engineers warned that any attempt to enter conventionally could trigger a complete collapse. We need someone who can get in and out quickly, with enough strength to hold up the ceiling if necessary, Tiger said, looking meaningfully at Izuku. You're talking about a full transformation, Izuku realized, in public. Mandalay nodded grimly. I wouldn't ask if there was another option, but those children have minutes, not hours. Izuku looked at the devastated building, then at the gathered rescue workers and heroes. Everyone should stand back, way back. As the area cleared, Izuku closed his eyes, connecting fully with Zenith. We need to be careful, precise. This isn't about power, it's about control. I understand, the symbiote replied. We will save them together. The transformation was faster than usual, his body expanding rapidly to full kaiju form. At 20 feet tall, Izuku towered over the rescue workers, his scaled body gleaming in the emergency lights. Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd, but he ignored them, focusing on the task. Carefully, he approached the collapsed school, using his claws to peel back layers of concrete and steel. His enhanced hearing guided him toward the trapped children, their frightened heartbeats a beacon in the darkness. When he reached the flooded basement, he braced his massive shoulders against the ceiling, taking the weight of the structure as he reached down with one hand. It's okay, he called, his voice a deep rumble that somehow still carried his gentle nature. I'm here to help. Grab onto my hand. The children, terrified but with no other options, climbed onto his massive palm, clinging to his fingers as he carefully lifted them. One by one, he brought them to safety, maintaining the structural integrity of the building through sheer strength until everyone was evacuated. As he stepped back, reverting to his human form, exhaustion hit him like a physical blow. He swayed, nearly collapsing, only to be caught by Tiger's strong arms. Easy, kid, the hero said. That was impressive work. The children he had rescued stared at him in wonder, unable to reconcile the enormous creature with the teenage boy before them. One small boy approached cautiously. Were you really that big monster? He asked. Izuku nodded, too tired to speak. The boy smiled. Cool. You're like Godzilla, but a good guy. Despite his exhaustion, Izuku laughed. For the first time, someone had seen his kaiju form and immediately thought hero rather than monster. It was a small shift, but significant. The rescue operation continued for 3 more days, with Izuku's abilities proving invaluable. By the time they returned to the agency, footage of his full transformation had gone viral, sparking debate about monster heroes and their place in society. You've made quite an impression, Mandalay told him as they reviewed the media coverage. Not everyone is comfortable with a hero who looks like a kaiju, but no one can deny your effectiveness. Will it be a problem? Izuku asked. For my hero career? It will be a challenge, she admitted. But pioneers always face resistance. What matters is that you saved lives that would have been lost otherwise. When Izuku returned to UA after the internship, he found the atmosphere had changed. His classmates had seen the footage of his full transformation, his true kaiju form, not just the partial transformations they'd witnessed at school. Some, like Kirishima and Uraraka, greeted him with increased admiration. Others, like Mineta, maintained a noticeable distance. Most surprising was Katsuki's reaction. Instead of jealousy or anger at Izuku's public success, he seemed thoughtful, almost introspective. "That was your full form?" he asked during a break between classes, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. Izuku nodded. "Close to it, I can grow a bit larger if needed." Katsuki was quiet for a moment. "Those kids would have died without you." It wasn't a question, but Izuku answered anyway. "Probably. The water was rising fast, and the structure was too unstable for conventional rescue." Katsuki seemed to be processing something. "Makes sense why you hid it all those years. That kind of power, people would have been scared." "They still are," Izuku pointed out. "But maybe a little less now." Katsuki nodded once, then walked away without another word. It wasn't friendship, but it was acknowledgement, perhaps the most Izuku could hope for given their history. The final exams approached quickly, bringing new challenges. The practical portion pitted students against teachers, with Izuku and Bakugo assigned to face All Might himself. "This is a test of restraint as much as power," Aizawa explained. "You must either capture All Might or escape through the exit gate. Fighting is not required to pass." As they entered the mock city, Katsuki immediately rejected the idea of running. "We're taking him down," he declared. "Both of us, full power." Izuku shook his head. "That's not the smart play, Kachan. All Might is wearing weighted restraints, but he's still the strongest hero in the world." "So what? You're a literal monster, and I'm no slouch either." "Even at full transformation, I'm not sure I could overpower him," Izuku admitted, "and the collateral damage would be enormous." Before they could resolve their strategy dispute, All Might appeared, his signature smile somehow more menacing in this context. "Come, young heroes," he boomed. "Show me your resolve." What followed was a brutal lesson in the gap between students and pros. All Might moved with blinding speed despite his weights, overwhelming Katsuki's explosions and anticipating Izuku's partial transformations. Even working together, they barely managed to land a single solid hit. "Is this all you have?" All Might challenged, brushing off their attacks. "I expected more from UA's monster hero." The taunt struck a nerve. Izuku felt Zenith surge within him, responding to his frustration. "He wants to see our true power," the symbiote observed. "Perhaps we should show him." In a controlled way, Izuku agreed. "But we need Kachan's help." As All Might prepared another attack, Izuku pulled Katsuki aside. "I need 30 seconds to transform fully," he explained quickly. "Can you distract him?" For once, Katsuki didn't argue. "Don't hold back this time, Deku." While Katsuki engaged All Might with his most spectacular explosions, Izuku retreated behind a building and focused inward. The transformation came faster than usual, his body expanding rapidly to full kaiju form. At 20 feet tall, he towered over the mock city's buildings, his scaled body gleaming in the sunlight. All Might paused his assault on Katsuki, turning to face the transformed Izuku with genuine surprise. "Now that's more like it, young Midoriya." The clash that followed shook the training ground. Izuku's kaiju strength matched against All Might's pinnacle of human power, each blow creating shockwaves that shattered windows in nearby buildings. Katsuki coordinated his attacks with Izuku's, using the distraction to land precision strikes on All Might's weighted restraints. Despite their improved coordination, All Might still held the advantage of experience. He anticipated their moves, using Izuku's size against him in the confined space of the city streets. When Izuku attempted to grab him, All Might simply redirected the force, sending him crashing through a building. "You have the power," All Might called as Izuku rose from the rubble, "but not the technique. Raw strength isn't enough." He's right, Izuku realized. We need to be smarter about this. As the battle continued, Izuku began to integrate his analytical thinking with his kaiju power, using controlled movements rather than brute force. He coordinated seamlessly with Katsuki, creating openings through feints and tactical retreats. All Might, recognizing their growth, increased his own effort accordingly. The turning point came when Izuku realized they didn't need to defeat All Might. They just needed to capture him or escape. With a roar that served as a signal to Katsuki, Izuku grappled with All Might, deliberately allowing himself to be thrown toward the exit gate. As All Might pursued, Katsuki unleashed his most powerful explosion yet, momentarily blinding the hero. In that brief window, Izuku reverted to human form and sprinted toward Katsuki, grabbing his arm. "The gate!" he shouted. "Now!" To his surprise, Katsuki didn't resist. Together, they raced toward the exit, All Might recovering just in time to see them cross the threshold to victory. "Young heroes!" All Might called as they collapsed in exhaustion just beyond the gate. "Well done. You recognize that victory sometimes means strategic retreat," Katsuki scowled. "Doesn't feel like winning." "But it is," Izuku pointed out, his breath coming in heavy gasps. "We completed the objective." All Might approached, his smile genuine now. "You both showed tremendous growth today. Young Bakugo, your willingness to cooperate rather than insist on direct combat shows maturity. And young Midoriya," he paused, studying Izuku with newfound respect, "your control over such immense power is truly remarkable." As they returned to the monitoring room where the rest of the class had watched their exam, Izuku found himself the center of attention. His full transformation, broadcast on the monitors, had left his classmates in awe. "That was incredible, Midoriya," Kirishima exclaimed. "You went toe-to-toe with All Might." "Not successfully," Izuku pointed out modestly. "Still," Todoroki said quietly, "it shows the gap we all need to bridge. Even with power like yours, there's still so much to learn." That evening, as Izuku reviewed the footage of the exam with his father, Hisashi pointed out something Izuku had missed. "Notice All Might's expression when you first transformed," he said, pausing the video. "That's not just surprise, that's recognition." Izuku studied the screen. Sure enough, All Might's face showed a flash of something beyond professional assessment, as if he had seen something familiar in Izuku's kaiju form. "What do you think it means?" Izuku asked. Hisashi shook his head. "I don't know, but All Might has been a hero for decades. He's seen things most people haven't. Perhaps he's encountered something like Zenith before." The possibility was both intriguing and unsettling. If All Might knew something about Zenith's nature or origin, it could provide answers Izuku had sought for years. But it might also bring unwanted attention to the alien aspects of his power, aspects he had carefully concealed from all but a few trusted individuals. "Should I ask him?" Izuku wondered. "Caution is wise," Zenith advised, "but knowledge is power. Perhaps an opportunity will present itself." That opportunity came sooner than expected. The training camp in the forest was meant to push the students' quirks to new limits, preparing them for provisional hero licenses. For Izuku, it meant learning to maintain his transformed state for longer periods while using less energy, efficiency rather than raw power. On the third day of training, as Izuku practiced partial transformations under Aizawa's supervision, All Might arrived for an inspection visit. The symbol of peace observed from a distance, his expression thoughtful as Izuku cycled through various partial transformations, arms, legs, torso, each with different levels of power output. When the training session ended, All Might approached. "Young Midoriya, might I have a word in private?" They walked to a clearing away from the main camp, neither speaking until they were certain of privacy. Then, All Might's form deflated, steam rising from his body as he reverted to his true appearance, thin, almost skeletal, with sunken eyes and a serious expression. "I've been wanting to speak with you about your quirk," he said without preamble, or rather, about what I suspect isn't a quirk at all. Izuku felt his heart rate spike. "What do you mean?" All Might coughed, wiping a trace of blood from his lips. "In my years as a hero, I've encountered phenomena that don't fit our understanding of quirks. Your power signature is different. During our exam, I felt something I've only sensed once before, a certain resonance that indicates something beyond human genetics." Izuku remained silent, weighing his options. Zenith stirred within him, curious but cautious. "I'm not here to expose you," All Might continued gently. "Whatever the true nature of your power, you've proven yourself worthy of it through your actions. I simply want to understand what we're dealing with, for your safety and others." The sincerity in All Might's voice decided it. Izuku took a deep breath, then told him everything. The meteorite, Zenith's consciousness, the symbiotic relationship they had developed over the years. All Might listened without interruption, his expression shifting from concern to fascination. "An extraterrestrial symbiote," he murmured when Izuku finished. "I suspected something unusual, but this is beyond my experience." "Only Principal Nezu knows the full truth," Izuku said. "Not even all my teachers are aware." All Might nodded. "That's probably wise. There are agencies that would take great interest in your condition, not all with benevolent intentions." "Like who?" Izuku asked, alarmed. "Government research divisions, private entities studying quirk evolution, and others with more questionable motives." All Might's expression darkened. "There are those who seek power by any means necessary." Izuku thought of Dr. Garaki's persistent interest over the years. "What should I do?" "Continue as you have been," All Might advised. "Exercise caution in who you trust with the complete truth. And perhaps," he hesitated, "perhaps consider allowing me to introduce you to someone who might help you understand Zenith's nature better, a scientist I trust implicitly." Before Izuku could respond, an explosion rocked the forest, followed by the blaring of emergency sirens. They turned to see smoke rising from the direction of the main camp. "We'll continue this conversation later," All Might said, instantly transforming back into his hero form. "For now, stay close to the other students. If this is a villain attack, a second explosion cut him off." All Might raced toward the camp, Izuku following close behind. As they approached, the scene became clear. The League of Villains had launched a coordinated attack on the training camp. Chaos reigned as students and teachers fought to defend themselves against multiple villains. A strange mist filled parts of the forest, causing disorientation and confusion. Izuku spotted Aizawa engage with a villain whose skin seemed to be made of blades, while Mandalay from the Pussycats fought to protect injured students. Young Midoriya, All Might called as they reached the edge of the camp. "Find your classmates and help evacuate the injured. Leave the villains to us pros." "We should transform," Zenith urged. "Our full power is needed." "Not yet," Izuku decided. "Too much confusion. We could hurt allies by accident." He found Uraraka and Tsuyu helping Aoyama, who appeared injured. "What happened?" he asked, joining them. "Villains came out of nowhere," Uraraka explained, her voice shaking. "They said they were looking for someone, specifically." A chill ran down Izuku's spine. "Looking for who?" Before she could answer, a wall of blue flame erupted between them, separating Izuku from his classmates. Through the fire stepped a man covered in burns and surgical staples, his eyes wild with malice. "Found you," Dabi said, blue flames dancing around his fingers. "The Kaiju kid. Boss wants a word." Izuku immediately shifted to a defensive stance, his arms partially transforming. "I don't talk to villains." "Wasn't asking." Dabi unleashed a torrent of fire that would have incinerated a normal person. Izuku's scales absorbed much of the heat, but the force still drove him back. "We need more power," Zenith insisted. "Not full transformation," Izuku replied. "Not with everyone so close, but more than this." He allowed the transformation to spread further, his entire upper body shifting to kaiju form while his legs remained human for mobility. The hybrid state gave him enough power to withstand Dabi's flames while maintaining the agility to dodge. "Interesting," Dabi observed, circling him. "You really are a monster underneath. No wonder Shigaraki is so interested." "What does the League want with me?" Izuku demanded, deflecting another blast of flame. "Your power, obviously." Dabi smirked. "Or rather, what's giving you that power? Our scientist friend has theories about your unique biology." The mention of a scientist sent warning bells through Izuku's mind. Could Dr. Garaki be connected to the League? Before he could pursue that thought, something hit him from behind, a needle piercing the scaled armor at the base of his neck. Almost instantly, his transformation began to recede, his body returning to human form against his will. "Quirk suppressant," a sweet voice explained as a blonde girl in a school uniform stepped into view, twirling a syringe. "Special formula just for you, courtesy of the doctor." Izuku tried to transform again, reaching for Zenith's power, but found only sluggish response. The symbiote's presence felt muffled, distant. "Zenith," he called mentally. "Still." "Here," came the faint reply. "But suppressed. Chemical, interfering with our connection." "Toga, Dabi, enough playing," a new voice called. Through the smoke stepped a thin man covered in hands, one obscuring his face. "We're taking him now." Shigaraki Tomura, leader of the League of Villains, approached with casual menace. The doctor is very interested in your quirk, hero student, or should I say, your passenger? Izuku felt cold dread wash over him. They knew about Zenith. Somehow, they knew. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, backing away while frantically trying to reestablish his connection with Zenith. No point lying, Shigaraki said, scratching at his neck with disturbing intensity. The doctor has been tracking your development for years. The meteorite, the alien, all of it. Very sloppy of your parents to let him take those blood samples when you were a child. Garaki. It had to be. The doctor, who had shown such interest in his quirk years ago, was working with the League. As Shigaraki reached for him, decay quirk ready to activate, a massive explosion rocked the area. Katsuki Bakugo burst through the smoke, his expression a mask of fury. "Get away from him, handface!" he shouted, unleashing another explosion that forced Shigaraki to jump back. "Kachan!" Izuku exclaimed. "The needle! They've suppressed my quirk!" Katsuki assessed the situation in an instant. "Then stay behind me, idiot. I'll handle these extras." What followed was a desperate fight. Katsuki's combat prowess had improved dramatically since their childhood, his explosions precisely controlled, yet devastatingly powerful. But he was outnumbered, facing Dabi's flames and Toga's unpredictable attacks while protecting Izuku. "We need to retreat," Izuku urged. "Find the teachers." "Working on it," Katsuki grunted, sweat pouring down his face as he maintained a defensive perimeter around them. The battle shifted when Todoroki arrived, his dual quirk creating a wall of ice and fire that separated them from the villains. "This way," he called, gesturing toward the forest. "Aizawa-sensei is regrouping the class at the facility entrance." As they ran, Izuku felt Zenith's presence gradually strengthening. "The suppressant is wearing off," the symbiote observed, "but slowly. We are still vulnerable." They had almost reached the main facility when a warp gate opened directly in their path. A misty figure emerged, Kurogiri, the League's transportation specialist. "Shigaraki Tomura requires your presence," he stated calmly, his yellow eyes the only distinct feature in his misty form. Todoroki reacted instantly, sending a wave of ice toward the villain. Kurogiri simply warped the attack away, opening another gate that returned the ice toward them from behind. "Your quirks are impressive," Kurogiri acknowledged, "but futile against my warp gate." As they fought to break through, Izuku felt his connection with Zenith growing stronger. Not enough for a full transformation, but perhaps sufficient for something targeted. "Focus on defense," he told the symbiote. "Protect our vital areas." His chest and head began to transform, scales spreading beneath his torn training uniform. The change didn't go unnoticed. "The suppressant is failing," and Kurogiri observed. "We must act quickly." Multiple warp gates opened around them. From one emerged a massive muscular figure with an exposed brain, a Nomu, one of the League's engineered fighters. From another came Shigaraki, his eyes gleaming with malicious intent. "The doctor was very specific," he said, approaching cautiously. "Bring the boy alive and relatively undamaged. The symbiote is the priority." Katsuki and Todoroki moved to flank Izuku protectively. "You're not taking him," Katsuki growled, "or any of us," Todoroki added, ice and fire dancing along his arms. Shigaraki smiled beneath the hand covering his face. "Who said anything about you two? You're just obstacles." The Nomu attacked with frightening speed, targeting Katsuki and Todoroki while Kurogiri opened a gate directly behind Izuku. Before he could react, hands grabbed him from behind, pulling him toward the warp gate. "Midoriya!" Todoroki shouted, trying to break free from the Nomu's grip. "Deku!" Katsuki's voice was raw with fury as he blasted the Nomu repeatedly, to little effect. As Izuku struggled against his captors, feeling himself being dragged inexorably toward the gate, a new voice thundered through the clearing. "Fear not, for I am here." All Might arrived like a force of nature, his punch creating a windstorm that dispersed Kurogiri's mist form temporarily. The hero moved with incredible speed, freeing Todoroki and Katsuki from the Nomu before turning his attention to Izuku. "Release the boy," he commanded the villains holding Izuku. "We can't," one of them, a lizard-like villain Izuku didn't recognize, replied with genuine fear. "The doctor will kill us if we fail, and I will stop you if you persist," All Might countered, his smile gone, replaced by grim determination. What happened next unfolded with devastating speed. Shigaraki, realizing their plan was failing, had made a desperate play. If we can't take him whole, we'll take a sample. He lunged at Izuku, all 5 fingers extended toward his face. At the same moment, Izuku felt Zenith surge within him, the symbiote concentrating all its recovering power into a defensive response. Scales erupted across his face and neck just as Shigaraki's fingers made contact. The decay quirk activated, but instead of disintegrating Izuku's flesh, it encountered the alien biology of Zenith's scales. The resulting reaction was explosive, a burst of energy that threw both Izuku and Shigaraki backward. What the? Shigaraki stared at his hand in shock. Where his decay quirk normally reduced matter to dust, Izuku's scales had somehow reversed the process, causing painful blisters to form on Shigaraki's fingers. Impossible, the villain hissed. His quirk countered mine? Not countered, Zenith explained to Izuku as they struggled to their feet. Adapted. We learned from the contact. His destruction converted to regeneration. All Might seized the opportunity, launching a coordinated attack with Todoroki and Katsuki that drove the villains back. Kurogiri, recovering his cohesion, quickly opened escape gates. This isn't over. Shigaraki warned as he retreated. The doctor won't give up so easily. Neither will my master. As the villains disappeared through the warp gates, Izuku felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. The quirk suppressant, though weakening, still interfered with his connection to Zenith. His partial transformation receded, leaving him fully human again. Young Midoriya, All Might said, supporting him as he swayed on his feet. Are you injured? Just tired, Izuku assured him. The suppressant they used, it's wearing off, but slowly. All Might's expression darkened. A quirk suppressant specifically designed for you. That suggests thorough research and preparation. They knew about Zenith, Izuku said quietly, ensuring only All Might could hear. They called it my passenger. This is troubling indeed. All Might glanced at Todoroki and Katsuki, who were being checked by the recently arrived recovery girl. We'll discuss this further once you're safe and recovered. The aftermath of the attack was chaotic. Several students had suffered injuries, though thankfully none life-threatening. The teachers had successfully driven off most of the villains, but the fact that the League had specifically targeted UA's training camp raised serious security concerns. As Izuku received treatment from Recovery Girl, Katsuki approached, his expression uncharacteristically subdued. They were after you specifically, he said. It wasn't a question. Izuku nodded. Seems that way. Because of your quirk? Yeah. Izuku hesitated, then added, There's more to it than most people know. Katsuki studied him for a long moment. I figured as much. No ordinary quirk gets that kind of attention. He sat on the edge of the medical bed. Look, Deku, I still think you're an annoying nerd who held back on me for years. But he struggled visibly with the words. What you did back there, protecting Todoroki and me even when your quirk was suppressed, that was gutsy. Coming from Katsuki, this was practically a declaration of eternal brotherhood. Izuku smiled slightly. You did the same for me. Jumped right in and against 3 villains. Course I did. Can't let villains take my rival before I've had a chance to beat him fair and square. But there was less heat in the words than usual, almost a hint of humor. Their conversation was interrupted by Aizawa, who approached with his arm in a sling, but his stern expression intact. Midoriya, the principal wants to see you as soon as we return to UA. All Might will be there as well. The meeting took place in Nezu's office, with only the principal, All Might, and Aizawa present. Izuku explained everything that had happened, including Shigaraki's mentions of the doctor and his knowledge of Zenith. This is deeply concerning, Nezu said when Izuku finished. If Dr. Garaki is indeed working with the League of Villains and has specific interest in Zenith's extraterrestrial nature, we face a more complex threat than we realized. Could he be creating Nomus with alien biology? Aizawa asked, his expression grim. Let's not jump to conclusions, All Might cautioned. But we should investigate this connection further. Nezu turned to Izuku. Young Midoriya, in light of these events, I believe it's time to take additional precautions regarding your safety and development. I'm implementing a specialized training program, one that will help you master all aspects of your symbiotic abilities while preparing you for possible future encounters with the League. What kind of training? Izuku asked. Combat techniques suited to your unique physiology, resistance to quirk-suppressing drugs, and perhaps most importantly, developing Zenith's potential in ways you haven't yet explored. There is much more we could do together, Zenith confirmed in Izuku's mind. Abilities we have not yet attempted. Additionally, Nezu continued, I think it's time to establish a small, trusted circle of individuals who know your complete truth, people who can protect you and support your development. My parents, Izuku began. Of course, Nezu agreed. As well as myself, All Might, and Aizawa-sensei, I would also suggest Recovery Girl, given her medical expertise. What about my classmates? Izuku asked, thinking particularly of Katsuki and Todoroki, who had fought to protect him despite not knowing what they were really defending. Nezu considered this. Use your judgment, young Midoriya. Trust is earned, not assigned. Those who have proven themselves worthy of your confidence may indeed be ready for the truth. As the meeting concluded, All Might asked to speak with Izuku privately. Once they were alone, the symbol of peace reverted to his true form, coughing slightly before speaking. Young Midoriya, there's something I need to tell you, something that may help you understand why the League is so interested in your symbiote. All Might lifted his shirt, revealing the massive scar that disfigured his torso. This wound was given to me by a villain called All for One, Shigaraki's master. He possesses the ability to steal quirks from others and use them himself, or transfer them to his followers. Izuku's eyes widened as he connected the dots. They want to take Zenith from me, to give its power to someone else. I believe so, All Might confirmed grimly. But Zenith isn't a quirk, it's a sentient alien entity. The interaction between All for One's power and your symbiote would be unpredictable at best, catastrophic at worst. What do? Izuku asked. Fear not for himself, but for Zenith churning in his stomach. We prepare, All Might said simply. Both of us. Because I suspect All for One won't be content to send underlings forever. Eventually he'll come himself. The weight of this revelation followed Izuku as he returned home that evening. His parents, already worried by news of the attack, embraced him tightly when he arrived. I'm okay, he assured them, but there's a lot I need to tell you. Over dinner, he explained everything. The League's specific targeting, their knowledge of Zenith, the connection to Dr. Garaki, and All Might's warnings about All for One. Hisashi's expression grew increasingly troubled. I knew there was something off about that doctor, he said, his fist clenching on the table. I should never have allowed those blood samples. You couldn't have known, Inko reassured him, though her face was pale with worry. None of us could have predicted this. What matters now is what we do next, Izuku said with determination beyond his years. Principal Nezu is implementing special training, and All Might believes I need to master more of Zenith's potential. We have barely scratched the surface of what we can become together, Zenith confirmed. The threat of this All for One requires our full capabilities. That night, as Izuku lay in bed, he reflected on how far he had come from the frightened child who had first transformed in a camping tent. He had learned to control his power, to use it for rescue and protection. He had begun to earn acceptance not just as a hero with a monstrous quirk, but as a hero whose monstrous form was itself heroic. Yet the road ahead seemed suddenly more dangerous, more complex. The League's interest in Zenith represented a threat not just to himself, but potentially to the entire hero society. If All for One acquired an alien symbiote with Zenith's capabilities, the consequences would be devastating. We will face this together, Zenith assured him, as we have faced everything else. Together, Izuku agreed, feeling a sense of resolve solidify within him, whatever comes next. Little did he know that next would come sooner than anyone expected. As he drifted to sleep across the city in a hidden laboratory, Dr. Kyudai Garaki examined test results from the sample Toga had managed to collect during the training camp attack, a few scales from Izuku's partial transformation preserved in a special container. Fascinating, the doctor murmured, adjusting his glasses as he studied the cellular structure under a microscope. Truly extraordinary. Not a quirk at all, but something more. Behind him, a figure sat in shadows, connected to life support machines that hissed and beeped rhythmically. Though his face was heavily scarred and his eyes unseeing, All for One smiled as he sensed the doctor's excitement. Is it as we suspected? He asked, his voice soft but commanding. Even more promising, Garaki replied, The symbiotic organism has completely integrated with the boy's DNA, creating a hybrid biology that's neither fully human nor fully alien. The adaptive potential is limitless. Excellent. All for One's smile widened. Prepare the extraction procedure. It's time I paid young Midoriya a visit. The final confrontation was approaching, a battle not just for Izuku's power, but for his very existence. The Kaiju hero's greatest test was about to begin. The Provisional Hero License exam loomed before Class 1A like a mountain to be conquered. For most students, it represented the next step toward professional heroism, a chance to prove their mettle against hundreds of other aspiring heroes from across Japan. For Izuku Midoriya, it represented something else entirely, a public stage where his abilities would be scrutinized not just by examiners but by society itself. Remember what we discussed? Aizawa told him the evening before the exam. Control is paramount, but don't artificially limit yourself. The examiners need to see what you're truly capable of. Izuku nodded, his expression serious. I understand, Sensei. That night, as he prepared his equipment and mentally reviewed strategies, Zenith stirred within his consciousness. We sense your unease, the symbiote observed. You fear how others will perceive our power. It's not just that, Izuku admitted aloud, knowing his roommates were asleep. The rescue operation showed what we can do when we don't hold back. But tomorrow is different. It's a controlled environment with specific expectations. Perhaps, Zenith replied, but the threats facing this world are not controlled. The darkness we sense grows stronger. All for One is merely one manifestation of forces beyond human understanding. This caught Izuku by surprise. What do you mean? What forces? The symbiote was silent for a moment, as if considering how much to reveal. There are others like me. Not identical, but similar in origin. Some have already found hosts on this planet. Others are approaching. Your world stands at a crossroads, Izuku. The Age of Quirks was merely the beginning of a greater transformation. Sleep eluded Izuku that night as he pondered Zenith's cryptic warning. By morning, he had resolved to demonstrate his abilities without reservation, not to intimidate or overwhelm, but to show the Hero Commission exactly what they had in their ranks. The exam venue buzzed with nervous energy as hundreds of students gathered from hero schools across Japan. Izuku stood with his classmates, noticing the way other examinees glanced at him with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. His performance at the UA Sports Festival and his involvement in the coastal rescue operation had made him recognizable. They're all watching you, Midoriya, Todoroki observed quietly. They see you as the one to beat. Before Izuku could respond, the examiners appeared, explaining the first phase of the test, a battle royale where students would target each other's mock villain targets while protecting their own. As Gang Orca detailed the rules, Izuku felt Zenith analyzing the environment, calculating optimal strategies. And one final note, Gang Orca added, his gaze lingering on Izuku. For participants with transformation quirks that significantly alter their size or physical capabilities, we've implemented specialized tracking systems to ensure fair evaluation. Remember, heroism isn't just about power, it's about appropriateness of response. The message was clear. Izuku would be watched particularly closely. When the exam began, chaos erupted. Students scattered, forming alliances or seeking targets of opportunity. Izuku moved deliberately, using only minimal transformations, enhanced speed, improved durability, sharpened senses to navigate the artificial cityscape. Midoriya, Uraraka called, joining him alongside Tsuyu. We should coordinate. Together, they moved through the battlefield, targeting other examinees with precision rather than overwhelming force. Izuku found himself falling naturally into a tactical role, his enhanced senses allowing him to detect approaching threats and coordinate their movements. The true challenge came when a group of examinees from Shiketsu High, led by the wind user Inasa Yoarashi, targeted them specifically. "UA's monster kid," Inasa shouted, his voice carrying over the whirlwind he generated. "Show us what you've got." Izuku recognized the provocation for what it was, a test, not just of his abilities, but of his judgment. Transforming his arms for increased strength, he anchored himself against Inasa's powerful wind, allowing Uraraka and Tsuyu to maneuver around the vortex. "I don't need my full power to pass this exam," Izuku called back, his voice carrying the faint dual tone that emerged with even partial transformations. "How disappointing." Inasa replied, intensifying his quirk. Heroes should give their all, always. The wind user's attack strengthened, threatening to sweep away not just Izuku's team, but several other examinees caught in the expanding vortex. Izuku recognized the danger immediately. Inasa's enthusiasm was creating a hazard for multiple participants. Decision time, Zenith noted. Show restraint or protect others? Izuku didn't hesitate. His transformation expanded, scales rippling across his body as he grew to 12 feet tall, his kaiju form anchoring itself against the artificial street. With a roar that momentarily silenced the battlefield, he clapped his hands together with precisely calculated force, creating a counter shockwave that disrupted Inasa's whirlwind without harming the examinees caught within it. Power without control endangers everyone, Izuku said, his transformed voice carrying across the suddenly quiet arena. A hero's responsibility is to protect, not just overcome. The moment changed the dynamics of the exam. Other students began giving Izuku's team a wide berth, recognizing both his power and his restraint. Examinees who had been caught in Inasa's vortex nodded appreciatively at Izuku before continuing their own battles. Most surprising was Inasa himself, who laughed boisterously. Well said, Yue. That's exactly the spirit I wanted to see. Instead of continuing his attack, he offered a dramatic bow before rushing off to engage other competitors. The first phase concluded with Izuku's team among those advancing, not because of overwhelming force, but because of strategic application of his abilities. As they prepared for the rescue portion of the exam, however, Gang Orca approached Izuku directly. Midoriya, the pro hero said, his expression unreadable behind his orca features. The rescue scenario has been modified to include a specific challenge for you. Sir, we've created a situation that would typically require multiple pro heroes to resolve. You'll be evaluated on your ability to handle it alone using your full capabilities while maintaining rescue protocols. Izuku swallowed nervously. I understand. The rescue scenario proved even more challenging than Gang Orca had implied. While other examinees faced simulated building collapses or natural disasters, Izuku was directed to a separate area designed to resemble a chemical plant explosion. Toxic smoke, actually harmless colored vapor, billowed from ruptured tanks while robotic victims were scattered throughout the hazardous environment. This scenario would typically require hazmat specialists, strength-type heroes, and search and rescue experts working in coordination, explained the examiner. Your task is to extract all victims without exposing them to further harm, neutralize the environmental hazard, and prevent structural collapse, all within 15 minutes. Looking at the complex disaster scene, Izuku realized the implications. You want me to use my full transformation? The examiner nodded once. We need to understand your capabilities in a controlled environment. Show us what you can do, Midoriya. Taking a deep breath, Izuku stepped forward. Rather than immediately transforming fully, he began with a strategic assessment, his partially transformed eyes scanning the environment for victims, structural weaknesses, and priority targets. We need to be methodical, he told Zenith. Not just power, but precision. The symbiote agreed. This is a test of control as much as strength. Let us show them both. What followed was a demonstration that would redefine the Hero Commission's understanding of Izuku's capabilities. He transformed in stages, first enhancing his durability to withstand the simulated toxins, then growing to 15 feet tall to access victims on higher levels, his scaled body protecting them as he carried them to safety. For victims trapped beneath debris, he demonstrated fine control, transforming just his arms to provide the necessary strength while maintaining human size to access confined spaces. Each rescue was executed with calculated precision, prioritizing the most vulnerable victims while preventing further structural damage. Most impressive was his solution to the chemical leak itself. Rather than simply containing it, Izuku partially transformed his respiratory system, developing specialized filtration capabilities that allowed him to literally absorb the toxic vapors, neutralizing the environmental hazard entirely. Remarkable, murmured one examiner, watching as Izuku completed the scenario in just under 12 minutes. His quirk isn't just strength and size, it's adaptive at a fundamental level. The final surprise came when one examiner activated an unexpected scenario element, a secondary explosion that threatened to collapse the entire structure with several victims still inside. Without hesitation, Izuku fully transformed, his 20-foot kaiju form bracing the collapsing building with his body, while simultaneously gathering the remaining victims in his arms. As he emerged from the smoke, carrying the last victims to safety, the gathered examiners and other students stared in awe. His full kaiju form, illuminated by emergency lights and wreathed in dissipating vapor, presented a sight both terrifying and somehow noble. Monstrous power harnessed for rescue rather than destruction. When the results were announced, Izuku had not only passed but received special commendation for unprecedented rescue capabilities, requiring new evaluation metrics. He had demonstrated exactly what Aizawa had suggested: control without artificial limitation, power with purpose. As Class 1A celebrated their successful examinees, Aizawa pulled Izuku aside. "The Hero Commission has requested a full assessment of your capabilities," he said without preamble. "They were impressed by your performance today." "Is that a good thing?" Izuku asked cautiously. "It's complicated," Aizawa admitted. "You've attracted attention at the highest levels. Some see you as a valuable asset, others as a potential concern. What matters is that you've proven yourself capable of heroic work, regardless of your unique nature." That evening, as Izuku called his parents to share the news of his success, a notification appeared on his phone, a news alert with his name in the headline. "Kaiju Kid redefines rescue heroics. Provisional license exam showcase signals new era." Attached was footage of his full transformation during the rescue scenario, captured by observation cameras and already trending across hero forums. The comments ranged from enthusiastic support to concerned speculation about the limits of his power. "Just the beginning," Zenith observed. "They are right to call it a new era. The threats approaching will require new kinds of heroes." "What threats?" Izuku asked aloud, remembering their conversation from the previous night. "You keep hinting at something coming, but you never explain." "Because I do not wish to burden you prematurely," the symbiote replied. "But soon you will need to know. The one called All for One is merely a shadow of greater dangers approaching your world. When the time comes, restraint will no longer be an option." The cryptic warning lingered in Izuku's mind as he began his provisional hero work, balancing his continuing education at UAA with limited field operations under supervision. The arrival of Eri and the Shi Hasaikai investigation would soon prove just how prophetic Zenith's words were. The Shi Hasaikai operation began as a standard investigation, concerning but seemingly manageable. Reports of a Yakuza faction developing quirk-erasing bullets had drawn the attention of pro-heroes, including Nitai Agency, where Izuku was completing his internship. What nobody anticipated was Izuku's unprecedented reaction upon their first reconnaissance mission. As they observed the Hasaikai compound from a distance, Izuku suddenly doubled over, his body convulsing as partial transformations rippled across his skin. "Midoriya!" Night-Eye exclaimed, moving to assist him. "What's happening?" "Pain," Izuku gasped, his eyes glowing with alien light. "So much pain. A child. Experimentation. It's screaming for help." "What child?" "There's no one visible," Mirio said, scanning the compound with concern. "Underground," Izuku managed, his voice distorting as Zenith's influence grew stronger. "Beneath the compound, someone is being torn apart and reassembled over and over. I can feel her suffering." The heroes exchanged troubled glances. Night-Eye's expression darkened. "How can you sense this? We have no intelligence about underground facilities or child victims." "Zenith," Izuku explained, struggling to control his transformation as waves of empathic pain washed over him. "The symbiote can sense biological distress, especially in children. Someone down there is being systematically destroyed and remade. It's like nothing I've felt before." This revelation changed the mission parameters immediately. What had been planned as extended surveillance became an urgent rescue operation. Night-Eye coordinated with other agencies, bringing in additional heroes, while requesting expedited warrants based on Izuku's testimony, carefully framed as quirk-based detection rather than alien empathy. During the planning sessions, Izuku found himself struggling with a new problem. Zenith's normally calm presence had become agitated, almost aggressive in response to the child's suffering. "We must act now," the symbiote insisted. "Every moment we delay is another cycle of agony for the child." We need to follow proper procedures, Izuku argued quietly, stepping away from the other heroes to have this internal conversation. Rushing in could make things worse. Procedures did not save you when you were being dissected as a child, Zenith countered, referencing their shared trauma from Dr. Garaki's examinations years earlier. Some violations require immediate intervention. When the raid finally launched, Izuku was assigned to Night Eye's team, tasked with locating and rescuing the child victim while other heroes engaged the Hasaikai members. As they breached the compound and faced the first wave of resistance, Izuku's enhanced senses immediately detected the labyrinthine tunnels beneath their feet. "She's below us," he told Night Eye, his partially transformed hand pressed against the floor. "Multiple levels down, and she's not alone. There's someone with her. Someone. Wrong." Night Eye nodded grimly. "That would be Overhaul. Kai Chisaki, his quirk allows him to disassemble and reassemble matter if he's been using it on a child." The implication hung in the air, unfinished but horrifying. As they fought their way deeper into the compound, encountering increasingly powerful Hasaikai members, Izuku found himself using more of his transformation than ever before in combat, not just for strength or durability, but for adaptive capabilities, developing immunities to the quirks they faced, enhancing his senses to navigate the changing maze, even manipulating his biological structure to squeeze through barriers meant to stop them. The confrontation with chronostasis proved particularly challenging, the Yakuza lieutenant's time-slowing quirk affecting even Izuku's enhanced reflexes. When a clock hand embedded in Izuku's shoulder gradually slowing his movements, Zenith demonstrated a new capability, accelerating their cellular metabolism to counteract the time effect. "Your quirk is interesting," Chronostasis observed as Izuku broke free from the temporal restraint far sooner than should have been possible. "But Overhaul has already analyzed your capabilities from the sports festival footage. He's prepared something special for monsters like you." The taunt might have bothered Izuku once, but now he simply fixed the Yakuza with glowing eyes. "Good. Then he won't be surprised when I come for him." When they finally reached the lower levels where Eri was being held, they found Mirio already engaged in desperate combat with Overhaul himself. The young hero was fighting brilliantly but at a disadvantage, having sacrificed his own safety to protect the small horn-headed girl cowering against the wall. Izuku's first glimpse of Eri sent Zenith into a frenzy of protective rage. The child's body bore the unmistakable signs of repeated trauma, bandages covering her arms and legs, hollow eyes that had witnessed horrors no child should endure, and most tellingly the spiritual exhaustion that came from having one's very existence repeatedly unmade. "She has been disassembled and reassembled hundreds of times," Zenith observed with cold fury. "Her quirk is being harvested." "This is worse than anything Garaki did to us." Something snapped in Izuku then, a restraint he had maintained since childhood, a line he had never allowed himself to cross. As Overhaul formed a massive spike of fused stone and metal, driving it toward the already injured Mirio, Izuku stopped calculating minimum necessary force. "Get away from her!" The roar that erupted from his throat was barely human, a sound that shook dust from the ceiling and caused even Night Eye to step back in alarm. What followed was transformation unlike anything Izuku had previously allowed himself. His body expanded rapidly, not to the 15 or 20 feet he had demonstrated before, but to nearly 30, his kaiju form growing larger and more fearsome than he had ever revealed publicly. Scales hardened into armor-like plates, his hands developed wicked claws, and a row of spines erupted along his back, glowing with barely contained energy. Overhaul's eyes widened in genuine fear as the monstrous form loomed over him, larger than the chamber was designed to contain. The ceiling cracked as Izuku's shoulders pressed against it, chunks of concrete raining down around them. "What the hell are you?" the Yakuza leader gasped, instinctively retreating. The answer came in a voice that blended Izuku's human tones with Zenith's alien cadence. "I am what you created when you hurt that child." When Overhaul tried to use his quirk, pressing his hands to the ground to reshape the environment, Izuku simply tore through the transmuted matter as if it were paper. When Overhaul attempted to disassemble Izuku directly, the Yakuza leader discovered a fundamental truth about Zenith's alien biology. It wasn't bound by the same rules as terrestrial matter. Your quirk requires understanding the composition of what you touch, Izuku growled, advancing as Overhaul's power failed to properly disassemble his transformed flesh. You can't deconstruct what you don't comprehend. For the first time, Izuku unleashed his full strength in combat against a human opponent. The battle, if it could be called that, was brutally one-sided. Overhaul's every defense was shattered, his attacks rendered meaningless against Izuku's overwhelming power. When the Yakuza fused with one of his lieutenants in desperation, creating a monstrous form of his own, Izuku simply grew larger in response, reaching a new threshold of nearly 35 feet. You think becoming a monster makes you stronger? Izuku's voice boomed through the crumbling chamber. I've been a monster my entire life. The difference is what we choose to do with that power. The deciding moment came when Overhaul, realizing he was outmatched, turned toward Eri with murderous intent. Before the Yakuza could reach her, Izuku moved with impossible speed for something of his size, interposing his massive body between Overhaul and the child. With a single sweeping motion, he caught the Yakuza leader in one clawed hand, squeezing just enough to immobilize without killing. It's over, Izuku declared, his transformation beginning to recede as the immediate threat to Eri subsided. You will never touch her again. In the aftermath, as medical teams treated the injured and police secured the Hasaikai members, Izuku found himself the center of concerned attention from both Night Eye and Aizawa, who had arrived with the backup team. That transformation, Night Eye said quietly, ensuring they weren't overheard. It exceeded all parameters in your file. Izuku nodded, unable to deny it. I didn't know I could grow that large. It was Eri. Seeing what he'd done to her triggered something primal in both me and Zenith. You lost control, Aizawa observed, his expression unreadable. No, Izuku corrected firmly. I chose to stop holding back. There's a difference. The distinction gave both pro-heroes pause. It was Night Eye who finally spoke. The power you displayed today, it's beyond what most pro-heroes can handle, let alone a student. If the wrong people had witnessed it, I know, Izuku acknowledged, but I couldn't stand by and calculate optimal force while Eri suffered. Some situations require everything we have. The conversation was interrupted by a small tug on Izuku's sleeve. Looking down, he found Eri staring up at him with wide, uncertain eyes. You're the monster that saved me, she said softly, her voice rough from disuse. Kneeling to her level, Izuku smiled gently. I'm Izuku, and yes, sometimes I can become a monster, but only to protect people like you. Her small hand reached up hesitantly, touching his cheek where traces of scales still lingered as his transformation continued to recede. You're not scary, she decided. Not like him. Something in Izuku's chest tightened at her simple acceptance. Thank you, Eri. That means a lot to me. The Hasaikai raid marked a turning point in Izuku's relationship with his power. He had crossed a line, not into uncontrolled rage, but into willing unleashing of his full capabilities when circumstances demanded it. The consequences of this shift would ripple through his training, his relationships, and ultimately, his understanding of what kind of hero the world truly needed. The remedial course that followed was ostensibly about helping students who had failed the provisional license exam. For Izuku, however, it became an unexpected opportunity to address the aftermath of his display at the Hasaikai compound. You'll be assisting with a special class today, Aizawa informed him one morning. Children from a local elementary school, a quirk counseling session. Quirk counseling? Izuku asked, confused by the assignment. Shouldn't that be handled by professionals? This is a special case, Aizawa explained. These are children with quirks that have caused them to be feared or isolated, transformation types, biological manipulations, appearance alterations. Children who, in some cases, have been called monsters. Understanding dawned on Izuku's face. And you want me to talk to them? Show them that being different doesn't mean being dangerous? Precisely, Aizawa confirmed. After your performance during the Hasaikai raid, the footage of which, despite our best efforts, has circulated among hero analysis communities, I think it's important to balance power with perspective. The session proved more impactful than Izuku could have anticipated. 20 children, ranging from 6 to 11 years old, all bearing quirks that had marked them as different. A boy whose skin turned to stone when he was frightened, a girl whose emotions manifested as physically painful energy discharges, twins who partially merged into a single entity when stressed. With Zenith's quiet guidance, Izuku spoke honestly about his experiences. The fear he had felt when his transformations first manifested, the struggle to control his power, and most importantly, the journey toward accepting his nature rather than merely containing it. Being different isn't what makes someone a monster, he told them, demonstrating controlled partial transformations to illustrate his points. It's the choices we make with our power that define us. A small boy with insect-like mandibles replacing his lower jaw raised a hand. His question, though difficult to articulate through his altered mouth structure, was clear enough. But what if people are always scared no matter what we do? Izuku considered the question carefully. That's a reality we sometimes have to accept, he acknowledged. But here's what I've learned. Fear often comes from not understanding. When people see that your differences allow you to help in ways others can't, that fear can transform into something else. Respect, appreciation, even admiration. To demonstrate, he told them about the earthquake rescue, showing approved footage of his kaiju form lifting debris that would have required multiple heroes or heavy machinery to move. This form that once terrified me became exactly what was needed in that moment, he explained. Your quirks, the things that make you different, may someday be precisely what's needed in a crisis no one else can handle. By the session's end, the change in the children was remarkable. They approached Izuku without hesitation, asking to touch his scales or watch specific transformations. One girl, whose quirk caused flowers to bloom from her skin but wither immediately, causing her constant pain, asked a question that struck Izuku deeply. Does it hurt when you transform? It looks like it would hurt a lot. It did at first, Izuku admitted, but I learned to work with the transformation instead of fighting it. Now it feels natural. Working with Zenith, he demonstrated a technique he had been developing, controlled, flowing transformation that moved through his body like water rather than the explosive change he had relied on earlier in his development. The girl watched in fascination as scales rippled across his arm without the violent structural changes his earlier transformations had required. Could I learn to do that with my flowers? She asked hopefully. Make them grow without hurting? I believe you can, Izuku told her. It's about harmony with your quirk, not dominance over it. As the children departed, Aizawa approached with an expression that, for him, almost constituted approval. Well handled, he said simply. You've given them something most quirk counselors can't provide. Genuine understanding. It felt right, Izuku admitted. Talking to them helped me process some things too. After the raid, after what happened with Overhaul, I've been questioning whether I've been approaching my power all wrong. How so? I've always focused on control, on limiting transformation to the minimum necessary. But what if that's backward? What if the key isn't restraining power, but directing it purposefully? Aizawa studied him for a long moment. That's the difference between a student and a true hero, Midoriya. Students learn to control their quirks. Heroes learn when control matters less than conviction. The conversation stayed with Izuku as UA prepared for its school festival, a seemingly trivial event that would nonetheless provide the next crucial step in his evolution. While most of his classmates viewed the festival as a welcome respite from the intensity of their hero training, Izuku approached it with characteristic analytical consideration. A performance, he mused, considering Class 1A's planned dance and music showcase. It's about controlling perception, isn't it? What do you mean? Uraraka asked as they worked on the stage design. The sports festival showed our combat abilities. The license exam demonstrated our rescue capabilities. But this, Izuku gestured to the preparations around them. This is about showing another side of heroes, the part that inspires and uplifts rather than just protects. Ida adjusted his glasses approvingly. An astute observation, Midoriya. Indeed, heroes must not only save bodies, but also nourish spirits. This perspective led Izuku to a radical proposal for his role in the performance, one that initially caused concern among his classmates. You want to incorporate your full transformation into the dance routine? Mina asked, eyes wide. Isn't that potentially terrifying for the audience? That's exactly the point, Izuku explained earnestly. Most people only see my kaiju form in contexts of combat or disaster. This is an opportunity to show that even the most monstrous-seeming power can create beauty. With Zenith's guidance on the biological possibilities, Izuku developed a specialized transformation for the performance, one that maintained his kaiju characteristics but with modifications that enhanced visual appeal rather than combat functionality. Bioluminescent patterns replaced threatening spines, flowing movements substituted for raw power, and most significantly, a perfectly controlled size that complemented rather than dominated the stage. During rehearsals, his classmates watched in amazement as Izuku transformed not with the explosive force they had witnessed in battle, but with fluid grace, his body becoming a canvas of light and motion that enhanced the music rather than disrupting it. "It's beautiful," Yaoyorozu said softly after one practice session. "I never imagined your quirk could be used like this." "Neither did I," Izuku admitted. "It's teaching me something important about integration rather than compartmentalization. My kaiju form isn't separate from my humanity, it's an expression of it." The festival itself proceeded joyfully, with students, faculty, and public visitors enjoying the rare opportunity to see UA's heroes in training in a celebratory context. Class 1A's performance drew particular attention, with Izuku's transformed role serving as a centerpiece that challenged preconceptions about monstrous quirks. The moment was nearly perfect, until screams erupted from the festival grounds outside the performance hall. A villain attack, opportunistic rather than targeted, had breached UA's perimeter during the public event. As alarm systems activated and teachers moved to protect the civilians, Izuku found himself at a crucial decision point. "We need to evacuate the performance hall," Ida urged, already shifting into emergency procedures. "The pros will handle the intruders." But Izuku, still in his performance transformation, sensed something the others couldn't, a particular biological signature that raised alarm bells in Zenith's alien awareness. "Not human," the symbiote warned. "Not Nomu either. Something familiar. Like us, but wrong." Making an instant decision, Izuku moved toward the disturbance rather than away, his bioluminescent performance form shifting rapidly to combat configuration. "I need to check something," he told his startled classmates. "This might be about me." Outside, the scene confirmed his suspicions. 3 villains were creating havoc, standard fare for a public disruption, but behind them lurked something else. A hulking figure with an oily, shifting surface that reminded Izuku unnervingly of Zenith's earliest manifestations in his childhood. Symbiote, Zenith confirmed grimly. Corrupt, unbalanced with its host. As pro-heroes engaged the human villains, the symbiote creature fixated immediately on Izuku, its amorphous head turning with unnatural precision. "Found you," it gurgled, voice distorting between multiple tones. "The pure one." Without waiting for the pros' coordination, Izuku fully transformed, abandoning the performance modifications for his combat form. Students and visitors gasped as the beautiful light display they had just witnessed on stage transmuted into the now familiar kaiju hero configuration, though notably without the rage or desperation that had marked his transformation against Overhaul. "Everyone back," he called, voice carrying the authority his training had developed. "This isn't a standard villain." The creature lunged toward him with surprising speed, its body elongating impossibly as it crossed the distance between them. When they collided, Izuku felt an immediate attempt at invasion, the corrupt symbiote trying to interface with Zenith's biology. "We reject you," Zenith declared, their shared consciousness erecting barriers against the intrusion. "You are contaminated." "What are you?" Izuku demanded, grappling with the creature as they crashed through festival stalls, careful despite the battle to direct their fight away from civilians. "Who sent you?" "The doctor made me," the creature snarled, its form rippling with unstable energy. "From your samples, from the scales, but I am incomplete. Need the source." Dr. Garaki. The implication was clear. The mad scientist been attempting to cultivate his own symbiote from samples collected during Izuku's childhood examinations, or perhaps from the training camp attack. The result was this unstable, aggressive entity seeking to complete itself by absorbing Zenith. "We must destroy it," Zenith advised with uncharacteristic harshness. "It cannot be saved. Its development was fundamentally flawed." For the first time in public, witnessing a threat that only he truly understood, Izuku made a conscious choice to unleash more of his power than he had ever revealed outside of the Hasaikai raid. His body expanded beyond his standard combat form, reaching 25 feet in height, energy crackling along his spine as he accessed capabilities previously reserved for private training. "I'm sorry," he told the corrupt symbiote, genuine compassion in his voice despite the battle. "You were created wrong. You're suffering." "Make it stop," the creature pleaded suddenly, its aggression momentarily giving way to something like desperation. "The voices. Too many voices." Understanding dawned on Izuku. This wasn't just a corrupted symbiote, it was a compound entity, multiple hosts partially bonded to the same symbiotic material, a perversion of the natural one-to-one relationship that he and Zenith shared. With guidance from Zenith, Izuku executed a technique they had only theorized during training, a focused energy projection from his hands that targeted the symbiotic material specifically, disrupting its cohesion without harming the human biological components beneath. The corrupt symbiote shrieked as the energy beam penetrated its defenses, its form beginning to dissolve. As it destabilized, Izuku could see glimpses of what lay beneath, human tissues, partially transformed and merged without harmony or purpose. Dr. Garaki's experiments had clearly crossed a line from unethical to monstrous. "Mercy," the creature begged as its form continued to disintegrate. "End it." With a final surge of carefully directed energy, Izuku granted its request. The symbiotic material evaporated completely, leaving behind 3 unconscious human forms. Victims rather than villains, Izuku realized, unwilling test subjects in Garaki's attempts to replicate Zenith's capabilities. As pro-heroes secured the scene and medical teams rushed to treat the freed humans, Izuku found himself the center of attention. Students, visitors, and pros alike staring at his fully transformed state with expressions ranging from awe to apprehension. All Might appeared at his side, placing a supportive hand on Izuku's massive scaled arm. "Well handled, young Midoriya," he said, loud enough for others to hear. "Your quick action saved lives today." The public acknowledgement from the symbol of peace, deliberately showing comfort with Izuku's monstrous form, did much to ease the tension in the watching crowd. As Izuku carefully reverted to his human form, he noticed something significant. The fear he had expected to see in civilians' eyes was largely absent. In its place was something closer to wonder, or even respect. "Is that what you were dancing as earlier?" a small child asked, tugging at his pant leg. "The monster hero?" Kneeling to the child's level, Izuku nodded. "That's right. Sometimes I look scary, but I'm always working to protect people." The child considered this with solemn seriousness. "I think you're cool, like Godzilla, but you dance better." The innocent comment broke the remaining tension, laughter rippling through the nearby crowd. As normalcy gradually returned to the festival, with increased security but determined resilience, Izuku realized something fundamental had shifted in his relationship with his power, and in the public's relationship with him. Later that evening, as UA staff debriefed the incident, Principal Nezu addressed the implications directly. "Dr. Garaki's involvement confirms our suspicions about his connection to the League and to All for One. More concerning is this attempt to replicate Midoriya's symbiote." "Could they succeed?" Aizawa asked, glancing at Izuku. "No," Izuku answered with certainty. "Zenith isn't just biological material that can be cultivated. We're a conscious partnership. What Garaki created was an echo without harmony, form without purpose." All Might nodded thoughtfully. "Nevertheless, this attack suggests a new phase in the League's interest in your abilities. They're becoming more direct, more desperate." "They're not the only ones interested," a new voice added as Hawks, the young wing hero, joined their meeting unexpectedly. "The Hero Commission has been monitoring the situation. Midoriya's public display today, both the performance and the battle, has attracted significant attention." "What kind of attention?" Izuku asked warily. Hawks' casual demeanor couldn't quite mask the seriousness in his eyes. "The kind that sees potential beyond standard heroics. The Commission is interested in your unique capabilities for special operations, particularly regarding the League and their Nomu program." "He's still a student," Aizawa objected immediately. "A student who just neutralized a threat that most pros couldn't even identify, let alone counter," Hawks countered. Look, I'm not suggesting putting him on the front lines, but his abilities, especially his symbiote's capacity to sense and counter other biological anomalies, could be invaluable for investigation work. The proposal led to heated debate among the faculty, with Izuku himself remaining thoughtfully silent, consulting internally with Zenith about the implications. By the meeting's end, a compromise had been reached. Izuku would provide limited consultative support to Hawk's investigation into the League, strictly under UA supervision, and with clear boundaries regarding his involvement. This arrangement would soon draw Izuku deeper into the shadowy conflict between heroes and villains, requiring him to develop not just physical transformations, but adaptations of perspective and purpose. The pro-hero arc of his journey had begun, one that would test not just his power, but his understanding of what heroism truly required in a world where the lines between human and monster grew increasingly blurred. Izuku's work with Hawks began cautiously. Information sharing, analysis of known Nomu biological signatures, theoretical discussions about symbiote detection capabilities. But what started as consultation soon evolved into something more active as Izuku's unique abilities proved invaluable in tracking the League's movements. "You can really sense these things?" Hawks asked during one operation, as Izuku identified a location where Nomu had recently been transported through. "From how far away?" "It depends on the concentration and type," Izuku explained. His eyes partially transformed to enhance his perception. "The artificial symbiote from the festival I could sense from nearly a kilometer. Standard Nomu have a weaker signature, maybe a few hundred meters. But the high-end types..." He shuddered slightly. "They broadcast like beacons to Zenith's senses. They're wrong on a fundamental level." This capability led to a breakthrough when Izuku, accompanying Hawks on what should have been a routine surveillance mission, suddenly stiffened and pointed toward an unmarked warehouse. "There," he said with absolute certainty, "multiple signatures, different from standard Nomu, more refined, more integrated, and something else." His expression grew troubled. Something familiar. The discovery of Dr. Garaki's secret laboratory marked a turning point in the investigation. Though the facility had been recently evacuated, evidence remained of extensive experimentation, not just on Nomu creation, but specifically on replicating Zenith's biological properties. "He's been studying you for years," Hawks observed, reviewing records they recovered before hero teams secured the site. Blood samples, tissue analysis, even theoretical models of your symbiote's consciousness structure. "It goes back to my childhood," Izuku confirmed grimly. "My parents trusted him as our family doctor. We never suspected he was working with All for One." Most disturbing was a sealed chamber deep within the facility, a containment unit designed specifically for a kaiju-level entity. The implications were clear. Garaki had been preparing not just to study Izuku, but to contain him for extended experimentation. "They weren't trying to kill you," Hawks realized. "They want to harvest your symbiote, to understand it, replicate it, maybe even control it." The revelation brought Izuku's collaboration with the pro-hero into new territory. No longer just an investigative resource, he became a key target requiring protection even as he assisted with the operation. This paradoxical position, simultaneously protector and protected, chafed against Izuku's developing identity as a hero capable of handling threats beyond standard parameters. "We are not vulnerable," Zenith insisted during one particularly heated planning session where Hawks and Aizawa debated risk assessments. "We are the predator, not the prey." The symbiote's assertion reflected a growing shift in their shared consciousness, a movement away from defensive caution toward proactive engagement. This evolution manifested in Izuku's next major confrontation with League forces, when intelligence suggested a Nomu transport operation near Deku City. "Observation only," Hawks had instructed firmly. "We need confirmation before the strike team moves in." Izuku had agreed to the parameters, but when his enhanced senses detected not just Nomu but human captives, potential subjects for Garaki's experiments, the decision matrix changed. "We cannot allow more victims," Zenith declared, memories of Ares' suffering still fresh in their shared consciousness, "not when we have the power to intervene." Rather than calling for backup and potentially losing the opportunity, Izuku made a calculated decision to act. His transformation was controlled but substantial, 20 feet tall, optimized for stealth despite his size, with specialized adaptations for the urban environment. The League members guarding the transport never saw him coming. Moving with impossible silence for something of his size, Izuku disabled the guards without lethal force, then tore open the reinforced transport vehicle to free the captives. 5 unconscious civilians with rare quirks, destined for Garaki's laboratory. What he hadn't anticipated was the presence of a high-end Nomu serving as hidden security, a refinement of Garaki's work that blended multiple quirks with enhanced cognitive function. The ensuing battle illuminated the night sky over Deka City, drawing attention that would have significant repercussions. Unlike previous encounters, Izuku didn't hesitate to unleash near-full power against the artificial being. His transformation reached 28 feet, energy projection systems activating along his spine as he engaged the Nomu in combat that destroyed several abandoned buildings and created a spectacle visible for miles. "You've been holding back," Hawks observed when he arrived with reinforcements, watching as Izuku systematically dismantled the high-end with precision attacks targeting its biological weaknesses. "This isn't the same level you showed at UA. It's what the situation requires," Izuku replied, his dual-toned voice matter-of-fact as he delivered a final energy burst that neutralized the Nomu permanently. Proportional response. The incident, though technically a success with all captives rescued and the Nomu operation disrupted, created public relations challenges that extended beyond standard hero operations. Video of the battle, Izuku's kaiju form illuminated by energy discharges as he fought the equally monstrous Nomu, spread across media platforms, reigniting debates about monster heroes and appropriate power thresholds. Most significant was the reaction from international hero organizations, which formally requested information about Japan's kaiju-class hero asset through diplomatic channels. The Hero Commission, caught between transparency and security concerns, arranged a closed assessment session where representatives from major hero nations could observe Izuku's capabilities in a controlled environment. "They're treating you like a weapons system rather than a hero student," Aizawa noted with clear disapproval as they prepared for the demonstration. "Perhaps that's appropriate," Izuku replied thoughtfully. "At the levels we're now operating, the distinction becomes philosophical rather than practical." The assessment session itself became a watershed moment in Izuku's public identity. Rather than minimizing his capabilities, he demonstrated them systematically. Controlled transformations at multiple size thresholds, adaptive biological responses to various attack types, energy projection capabilities, and most impressively, Zenith's ability to sense and counter other biological anomalies. "What we're witnessing isn't just a powerful quirk," observed the American representative. "It's an entirely new category of hero capability." The European delegate was more direct. "How do we know this power remains aligned with heroic values? What safeguards exist if control is compromised?" In response, Izuku did something unexpected. He invited Eri to join the demonstration. The small girl, still recovering from her ordeal but making steady progress at UA, approached him without hesitation. As international representatives watched, she climbed fearlessly onto his partially transformed hand, completely comfortable with the scales and claws that many adults found disturbing. "The best safeguard is purpose," Izuku explained, gently lifting Eri to shoulder height where she perched happily. "Power without purpose is just potential chaos. My purpose has always been protection. That's what guides every transformation, every adaptation. The image, a kaiju form hero cradling a small child who had every reason to fear monsters, spoke more eloquently than any technical explanation could. By session's end, international concerns had largely shifted from containment considerations to potential collaboration frameworks. This evolution in external perception paralleled Izuku's internal development as the joint training arc approached, a controlled competition between hero classes that would showcase just how far his understanding of his capabilities had progressed. The joint training exercise was initially conceptualized as a standard inter-class competition, teams from Class 1A facing teams from Class 1B in tactical scenarios designed to highlight different quirk applications. For Izuku, however, the training coordinators designed something unprecedented. "We'll be testing a different parameter with you, Midoriya," Vlad King explained during the briefing. Instead of standard team configuration, you'll be facing multiple opponents simultaneously, a simulation of how a Kaiju-class hero might need to handle dispersed threats. The setup was ambitious. Izuku, operating alone, would face a rotating series of three-person teams from both hero classes with minimal recovery time between engagements. The scenario was designed to push not just his raw power but his tactical flexibility and endurance. This isn't fair to Midoriya, Uraraka objected. No one else has to fight multiple teams consecutively. On the contrary, Aizawa countered, it acknowledges a fundamental truth. Heroes with Midoriya's capability profile will inevitably face different deployment patterns than standard heroes. This is preparation, not punishment. Izuku himself approached the challenge with analytical interest rather than concern. It's a logical extension of how I would actually operate in crisis scenarios. He acknowledged. One Kaiju-class responder can potentially replace multiple standard units in certain situations. The framing itself revealed how far his perspective had evolved, no longer thinking of himself primarily as a student among equals, but as a specialized resource with unique operational parameters. This shift was not about superiority, but pragmatic assessment of capabilities and responsibilities. When the exercise began, Izuku initially approached it with measured transformation, using only partial adaptations against the first team, focusing on technique rather than overwhelming force. As subsequent teams arrived with minimal intervals, however, he began implementing strategies that showcased newer capabilities developed during his training with All Might and his work with Hawks. Most notable was his demonstration of distributed transformation, the ability to selectively enhance different body systems simultaneously rather than transforming uniformly. Against Todoroki, Bakugo, and Tokoyami, he manifested enhanced skeletal reinforcement against Bakugo's explosions, heat-resistant scales against Todoroki's flames, and light-generating capabilities against Dark Shadow, all without increasing his overall size beyond human parameters. He's adapting specifically to each of our quirks, Todoroki observed, adjusting his ice strategy as Izuku's skin developed crystalline patterns that dispersed freezing effects. It's not just strength anymore. Its targeted countermeasures. The most dramatic moment came when Izuku faced what should have been his greatest challenge, Shinso, Monoma, and Kendo simultaneously, a team specifically designed to counter transformation quirks through mental interference and physical restriction. When Monoma attempted to copy Izuku's abilities after brief contact, the backlash was immediate and enlightening. "It's not a quirk," Monoma gasped, dropping to one knee as his body rejected the attempted replication. "Not entirely. There's something else, something alive." Taking advantage of the distraction, Izuku demonstrated another new capability, a limited form of the swarm consciousness that Zenith had been helping him develop. Rather than a single transformation, he manifested multiple partial transformations that operated semi-independently, allowing him to engage three opponents simultaneously with what appeared to be coordinated attacks from different angles. "Is he creating duplicates?" Kendo asked in disbelief as she found herself grappling with what seemed to be a transformed arm operating without direct connection to Izuku's main body. "Not exactly," Izuku explained as he systematically neutralized all three opponents. "It's more like distributed attention. Zenith can maintain limited autonomous function in separated biological material for short periods." The implications stunned observers, not just students, but the watching teachers and even the remote monitoring team from the Hero Commission. What Izuku had demonstrated wasn't simply enhanced strength or durability, but a fundamental reimagining of what biological quirks could accomplish with sufficient development and alien influence. By exercise's end, having successfully countered 7 consecutive teams with increasing efficiency, Izuku had established a new paradigm for how his capabilities would be understood. No longer just the student with the kaiju quirk, he had demonstrated a versatility and tactical sophistication that transcended standard quirk classifications. "That wasn't just power," All Might commented during the debriefing. "That was evolution in real time." The joint training exercise marked a transition point in how UA approached Izuku's education. Rather than attempting to fit him into standard training protocols, instructors began developing specialized scenarios that acknowledged his unique operational profile. More significantly, Other students began adapting their own training to accommodate the reality of working alongside Kaiju-class allies, developing support techniques, coordination protocols, and complementary strategies. This shift in perspective extended beyond UA when, to everyone's surprise, Endeavor specifically requested Izuku for an agency placement during the next training cycle. "You want Midoriya specifically?" Aizawa confirmed during the arrangement discussion. "May I ask why? Your agency typically favors fire quirk users." The number one hero's expression remained stern, but there was something calculating in his gaze. The hero landscape is changing. Powers like Midoriya's represent a new tactical category that existing protocols don't adequately address. I intend to develop those protocols. Behind the professional justification, Izuku sensed something more personal. A recognition from Endeavor that the traditional power hierarchy among heroes was shifting. The man who had spent decades pursuing All Might's position now faced a generation of heroes whose capabilities potentially exceeded even that benchmark. The Endeavor agency placement proved more significant than anyone anticipated when, during what should have been a standard patrol observation, Izuku's enhanced senses detected something disturbing. "There's a Nomu nearby," he alerted Endeavor suddenly, stopping mid-patrol. But different. More refined than anything I've encountered before, and it's aware, actively processing, not just responding to stimuli. Endeavor's response was immediate and pragmatic. "Location and threat assessment? 2 kilometers northeast, moving this direction," Izuku reported, his eyes transforming to enhance his perception. "Threat level? Maximum. This isn't like previous Nomu. It's strategic, purposeful." "Hood," Endeavor muttered, recognizing the description from intelligence reports. "A high-end prototype. We need backup." But before they could implement standard protocols, the high-end launched its attack, not randomly, but with precise targeting that suggested detailed intelligence. It moved directly toward Endeavor and Izuku, bypassing civilian targets and other heroes with singular purpose. "It's here specifically for us," Izuku realized as they engaged the artificial being. Or maybe just for me. The battle that followed would become iconic in hero media. Endeavor and Izuku fighting in seamless coordination against a threat that required their combined capabilities. What started as Endeavor leading with Izuku in support quickly evolved as the high-end demonstrated abilities specifically designed to counter flame-based attacks. "It's adapted to you," Izuku called to Endeavor as the Nomu shrugged off a prominence burn that should have incinerated it. "They designed it to beat you specifically." "Then show me what they didn't prepare for," Endeavor responded, adjusting his strategy to create openings rather than deliver finishing blows. The invitation, an acknowledgement from the number one hero that this situation required Izuku's specialized capabilities, represented a fundamental shift in operational hierarchy. Without hesitation, Izuku transformed to his full combat configuration, 25 feet of precisely controlled power. What followed was a demonstration that changed public perception of monster heroes permanently. Fighting in the heart of a major city, Izuku demonstrated not just raw power, but unprecedented precision, containing the battle to minimize collateral damage, protecting civilians with strategic positioning, and most impressively, adapting his biological structure in real time to counter the high-end's evolving attacks. "It regenerates too quickly," Endeavor observed as conventional attacks proved ineffective against the Nomu's recovery capabilities. "We need to neutralize it completely in a single attack." Understanding immediately, Izuku implemented a capability he had been developing but had never demonstrated publicly. A concentrated energy projection that targeted specific biological structures rather than causing general damage. The beam that erupted from his transformed maw wasn't the raw destruction of his earlier manifestations, but a precisely calibrated disruption of the high-end cellular cohesion. Its regeneration is based on specific activation proteins, Izuku explained as the Nomu's recovery suddenly failed. This targets those proteins specifically, not just damaging tissue but preventing repair pathways. The technique proved decisive. With the high-end's regeneration neutralized, Endeavor delivered a finishing prominence burn that completely incapacitated the artificial being. As emergency services secured the scene, civilians emerged from shelter, not running from Izuku's kaiju form as might once have been expected, but approaching with cautious appreciation. "You saved us," an elderly man said simply, looking up at Izuku's transformed state without fear. "Both of you." The moment was captured by Hero Network cameras, Japan's #1 hero standing alongside a fully transformed Kaiju-class student, both acknowledged equally by the citizens they had protected. The image would become symbolic of a transition in hero society, a recognition that power itself was neutral, purpose-defined heroism. During the debriefing, Endeavor addressed Izuku with uncharacteristic directness. "Your capabilities exceed standard classification," he stated flatly. "The protocols I intended to develop would be insufficient. What we need instead is a new operational category entirely." "What do you mean?" Izuku asked. "Monster heroes," Endeavor said without flinching from the term. "Not as a pejorative, but as a tactical designation. Heroes whose capabilities operate at scales beyond conventional response patterns. You're the first, Midoriya, but I suspect you won't be the last." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert. News of a villain attack involving multiple League members, including Shigaraki himself. Though Endeavor immediately mobilized to respond, he made a decisive command decision regarding Izuku. "Stay with Hawks," he instructed. "This feels coordinated. The high end here, Shigaraki there. They may be trying to separate us specifically." The assessment proved prescient when, shortly after Endeavor's departure, Izuku's enhanced senses detected something approaching, something that sent Zenith into a state of alert unlike anything they had experienced before. Power. Ancient. Corrupted, the symbiote warned. "He comes." "Who?" Izuku asked aloud, drawing Hawk's concerned attention. "The thief of power, the one you call All for One." The confrontation that followed would mark the beginning of what would later be called the Dark Hero arc, a period where Izuku's understanding of his role would transform as fundamentally as his body had. For in facing All for One directly, he would discover that some threats required not just power, but a willingness to become something beyond conventional heroism. Something darker, more primal, but no less necessary for humanity's protection. The first encounter with All for One was mercifully brief, but profoundly consequential. The villain's appearance, unexpected and seemingly impossible given his supposed imprisonment, lasted only minutes, but in that time, Izuku experienced something unprecedented. Direct attempted interference with his symbiotic bond. "Fascinating," All for One observed, his featureless mask betraying no emotion as he extended a hand toward Izuku. A consciousness beyond human origin, yet perfectly integrated. Dr. Garaki's reports hardly did it justice. The sensation that followed defied description, a pressure not physical, but existential, as if something were attempting to peel Zenith's consciousness away from Izuku's. For the first time since their earliest bonding, Izuku felt the symbiote's presence waver, their connection briefly destabilizing. "He's trying to take Zenith," Izuku realized with horror. "His quirk works on the symbiote." "Not completely," Zenith corrected, rallying against the intrusion. "Our bond transcends his understanding, but he is dangerously knowledgeable." Hawk's immediate intervention, a barrage of feathers targeting All for One's mask and life support systems, broke the villain's concentration momentarily. In that instant, Izuku made a decision that would alter his approach to his power fundamentally. Rather than transforming partially or incrementally as he had typically done, he surrendered completely to the transformation, allowing Zenith unprecedented control over their shared biology. The result was a transformation beyond anything he had publicly demonstrated. 30 feet tall with biological structures that defied conventional analysis. Not simply scaled or armored, but fundamentally alien, optimized not for appearance or controlled heroics, but for survival against existential threat. "Now that," All for One remarked with evident satisfaction, "is what I've been waiting to see. Your true form, young Midoriya. Or, should I say, Zenith's true form through you." The battle that followed was brief but devastating. All for One wielding multiple stolen quirks with masterful precision, Izuku responding with biological adaptations that evolved in real time against each attack. Buildings were damaged, streets cratered, and the very air seemed to distort around them as energy discharges from both combatants interfered with standard physical laws. Most alarming to watching heroes was the realization that All for One wasn't fighting to defeat Izuku. He was testing him, probing for weaknesses, analyzing responses. When reinforcements arrived in the form of multiple top heroes responding to Hawks' emergency signal, The villain simply nodded as if satisfied with the data collected. We'll continue this discussion when you're ready to transcend these limitations. All for One told Izuku cryptically before activating a teleportation quirk and vanishing. The aftermath left Izuku in an unprecedented situation. His transformation, triggered by existential threat and fueled by protective instinct, didn't recede normally when the danger passed. For hours, he remained in the enhanced kaiju state, Zenith's consciousness unusually dominant in their shared mind as the symbiote processed the encounter. "What's happening to him?" Recovery Girl asked with professional concern as Izuku sat in UA's largest training facility, still fully transformed and unresponsive to standard communication. "Adaptation," All Might answered, his skeletal form somehow small beside Izuku's massive form. All for One attempted something unprecedented, direct interference with the symbiotic bond. They're reconfiguring their connection to prevent future vulnerability. When Izuku finally spoke, his voice carried more of Zenith's cadence than his own. "He knows more about us than should be possible. About our kind. About our potential." "Your kind?" Aizawa asked sharply. "You mean symbiotes?" "Yes. All for One has encountered others before, corrupted them, integrated their properties into his power-stealing capability." The massive head turned toward All Might. "You faced him when he was partially bonded with a degraded symbiote. That's how he survived your most powerful attack." This revelation stunned even All Might. "I never knew. I thought his survival was due to accumulated quirks." "That was part of it," Izuku Zenith acknowledged. "But not all. He has been studying our kind for generations. Preparing." "For what?" Nezu asked, joining the conversation with characteristic analytical focus. "For something coming. Something he believes only symbiote-enhanced humans can survive." The dual consciousness paused, seemingly debating internally how much to reveal. "There are threats approaching Earth that conventional heroes cannot counter. All for One knows this. It's why he wants our bond, not just for power, but for adaptation capability." This conversation marked a crucial transition in Izuku's heroic development, a recognition that the stakes extended beyond conventional villain conflicts into something approaching existential threat. The realization brought with it a new operational philosophy, one that would characterize his approach through what became known as the Dark Hero phase. Rather than focusing solely on visible heroics or public rescue operations, Izuku began working with Hawks and a specialized task force to hunt down All for One's network, operating more in shadows than spotlight, utilizing Zenith's sensory capabilities to track biological signatures associated with Nomu production and symbiote experimentation. "This isn't standard hero work," Hawks acknowledged during one operation, watching as Izuku's transformed state moved with impossible stealth through an abandoned research facility. "We're operating closer to intelligence services than rescue heroes." "It's necessary," Izuku replied simply. "Standard approaches won't work against what's coming." What was coming became clearer when international hero channels reported an anomaly in North American airspace, an unidentified object that had breached atmosphere and crashed in a remote region. When U.S. heroes investigated, they encountered something that matched no known quirk profile, but registered as distinctly familiar to Izuku when he reviewed the secure footage. Another symbiote, Zenith confirmed, but different lineage, more aggressive baseline, military application rather than exploration. "There are different types of symbiotes?" Izuku asked aloud, drawing curious looks from the international coordination team. "Many kinds, many purposes," Zenith explained. "My kind were scouts, observers, data gatherers, designed for integration and understanding. Others were developed for conquest, resource acquisition, even planetary conversion. The implications were staggering. Extraterrestrial entities with varied purposes arriving on Earth, potentially drawn by the same factors that had brought Zenith's meteorite years earlier. When Izuku shared this intelligence with hero leadership, the response was immediate. Establishment of a specialized response unit with Izuku as technical advisor. "We're calling it the Exobiological Threat Assessment Division," the Hero Commission representative explained. "Focused specifically on non-quirk biological anomalies of the type you've helped identify." Izuku recognized the development for what it was: institutionalization of a new hero category built around his capabilities. No longer just an exceptional individual, He was becoming the template for an entire operational framework. This evolution reached its most dramatic expression when reports emerged of a new international hero making her way to Japan. Star and Stripe, America's top hero whose reality manipulation quirk represented one of the few powers potentially capable of countering symbiote-level threats. "She's coming specifically to meet you," Hawks informed Izuku during a rare break between operations. "The Americans are concerned about these exobiological incursions and want to establish protocols between our respective specialists." The meeting, scheduled to take place on neutral territory over international waters, never occurred as planned. En route to the rendezvous, Izuku's enhanced senses detected something approaching, something that sent Zenith into unprecedented alert status. World Killer, the symbiote identified with unmistakable dread. Highest threat classification. What emerged from the clouds was unlike any villain or Nomu Izuku had encountered. A massive entity that seemed partially physical and partially energy, with a biological signature that registered as both symbiotic and fundamentally altered from baseline parameters. "What is that?" Star and Stripe demanded over the communication channel, her aircraft approaching from the opposite direction. "A corrupted symbiote," Izuku replied, already transforming to his combat configuration, but different, enhanced, weaponized. The entity seemed to recognize Izuku immediately, changing course to intercept him with frightening precision. When it spoke, its voice carried both through air and directly into Izuku's mind. Target identified. Pure symbiote detected. Absorption protocol activated. The battle that followed would redefine international understanding of exobiological threats. Fighting at his full 30-foot manifestation, Izuku demonstrated capabilities he had never revealed publicly. Energy manipulation beyond simple projection, biological adaptations that occurred in real time in response to the entity's attacks, and most significantly, a form of reality anchoring that counteracted the distortion field the corrupted symbiote generated around itself. When Star and Stripe joined the confrontation, bringing her New Order quirk to bear, the synergy between her reality manipulation and Izuku's biological adaptations created an unprecedented tactical advantage. While her power established new rules for the engagement space, Izuku's symbiote integrated those rules into their biological response, creating attacks that operated according to her quirk-defined parameters. "You're adapting to my quirk in real time?" she observed with professional appreciation as the air around the entity becomes solid, was immediately followed by Izuku manifesting specialized impact structures designed to utilize the solidified air as attack vectors. "Zenith can integrate external rule systems into our biological responses," Izuku explained, launching another coordinated attack. "Your quirk creates the framework. We optimize within it." This coordination proved decisive when the entity attempted to absorb Star and Stripe's quirk directly, a capability alarmingly similar to All for One's power theft. With split-second timing, Izuku interposed himself between them, his symbiote creating a biological barrier that disrupted the absorption attempt. The price was severe. Temporary destabilization of his own transformation as Zenith diverted resources to counter the corruption attempting to spread from contact with the entity. For critical moments, Izuku reverted to human form, vulnerable and exposed as the symbiote fought internal contamination. It was in this moment of vulnerability that Star and Stripe demonstrated why she held America's top hero position. Using her quirk with unprecedented precision, she established a new rule. The symbiote within Izuku Midoriya cannot be corrupted by external influence for the next 5 minutes. The temporary protection allowed Zenith to stabilize and restore their transformation, this time with modifications specifically designed to counter the entity's corruption vectors. What followed was Izuku's most complete unleashing yet. Not just physical transformation, but full integration of Zenith's alien capabilities, including limited reality perception that allowed him to identify weaknesses in the entity's dimensional structure. "There," he called to Star and Stripe, indicating a fluctuating point within the entity's mass. "Its core exists partially in another dimensional phase. Your quirk can target it if you define the parameters correctly." Working in perfect coordination, they executed a combined attack, Star and Stripe declaring, "The entity's core exists fully in our dimension for 5 seconds," while Izuku delivered a precisely calibrated energy projection that disrupted the core's molecular cohesion during that brief window of vulnerability. The entity's destruction was spectacular but controlled, Izuku's final adaptation creating a containment field that prevented either corruption spread or energy dispersion that might have affected the surrounding area. As the threat dissipated, leaving behind only trace readings of exotic particles, both heroes recognized the significance of what they had accomplished. That wasn't just a villain, Star and Stripe stated flatly, her expression grave beneath her distinctive mask. That was a vanguard. Yes, Izuku confirmed, Zenith's knowledge filtering through their shared consciousness. They're called harvesters, artificially evolved symbiotes designed to prepare worlds for consumption. The fact that one has reached Earth suggests larger threats are approaching. The debriefing that followed, involving top hero leadership from multiple nations, established new protocols for what was now recognized as a genuine existential threat category. Izuku found himself central to these discussions, not as a student or even as a hero, but as Earth's most knowledgeable resource on symbiote biology and capabilities. We need to understand everything your symbiote knows about these threats, the International Committee chair stated directly. Full disclosure, no classified restrictions. There's a complication, Izuku responded carefully. All for One has been preparing for these incursions for generations. He sees them as an opportunity, a catalyst for his vision of power evolution, and he knows more about symbiote biology than anyone except perhaps Zenith itself. This revelation shifted focus back to the domestic threat that had temporarily been overshadowed by the international incident. If All for One was positioning himself relative to these exobiological incursions, then the League of Villains represented not just a criminal organization, but potentially an existential threat vector. It was this understanding that led Izuku into the most challenging phase of his development, the investigation into UA, suspected traitor, and the connections between the school, the League, and All for One's grand design. The traitor investigation required capabilities beyond standard heroics, subtle detection, pattern recognition, and most critically, Zenith's ability to sense biological anomalies that might indicate external influence or divided loyalties. Working with a small trusted team including Nezu, Aizawa, and All Might, Izuku implemented a systematic approach to identifying the information leak within UA. We're not looking for conventional betrayal, Nezu explained during their planning session. All for One's methods are rarely so simple. We need to consider everything from blackmail to quirk-based manipulation to unconscious information transmission. The investigation proceeded carefully, with Izuku using his enhanced senses during seemingly casual interactions with staff and students. Rather than overt transformation, he maintained subtle biological adaptations that enhanced his perception without revealing his purpose. The breakthrough came unexpectedly during a routine training exercise when Izuku's symbiote detected something anomalous about Aoyama's biological signature, a subtle irregularity that suggested external modification. It's not quite like a Nomu, Izuku explained privately to Aizawa after the session, more like an artificial connection, something linking him to an external consciousness or monitoring system. Further investigation revealed the tragic truth. Aoyama's parents had made a desperate bargain with All for One years earlier, receiving a quirk for their quirkless son in exchange for loyalty. The arrangement had evolved into reluctant espionage, with Aoyama providing information under duress to protect his family. The revelation hit Izuku particularly hard. In another reality, one where he hadn't encountered Zenith's meteorite, he might have faced similar desperation as a quirkless child. The parallels weren't lost on him as they developed a plan to address the situation without destroying Aoyama's life. We can use this, Izuku suggested during the strategy session. Turn it back on All for One, feed controlled information through Aoyama while we prepare for the real confrontation. The counterintelligence operation that followed demonstrated how far Izuku had evolved from conventional hero paradigms. Working with Hawks and the Specialized Task Force, he helped design information packages that would lead All for One and the League into a carefully prepared trap, one that would bring the shadow conflict into the open on terms favorable to the heroes. What they didn't anticipate was how thoroughly All for One had prepared for this eventuality. The trap, when sprung, revealed itself to be multi-layered, a counter-trap designed to separate key heroes and isolate Izuku specifically for extraction. He knew we would discover Aoyama, Izuku realized as Nomu targeted key hero positions with unprecedented coordination. This entire scenario was engineered to bring me to this exact location. The location, a seemingly abandoned research facility that revealed itself to contain sophisticated containment systems specifically designed for symbiote capture, became the stage for what would later be recognized as the beginning of the final war arc. As hero teams engaged Nomu and League villains across multiple fronts, Izuku found himself face-to-face with not just All for One, but a formed Shigaraki, the villain's body now hosting partial symbiote integration of its own. "We've been waiting for this moment," All for One announced, his mask removed to reveal a face partially reconstructed with symbiote material. The final evolution begins today. The battle that erupted transcended conventional hero combat. Izuku, recognizing the existential nature of the threat, abandoned all previous limitations on his transformation. His body expanded beyond previously revealed parameters, reaching 35 feet with biological structures that defied conventional analysis, not just scaled or armored, but fundamentally alien in configuration. Most significantly, he and Zenith achieved something they had only theorized in private training: complete consciousness integration. Their separate identities temporarily merged into a unified entity that processed information and responded to threats with unprecedented efficiency. "You've progressed further than we anticipated," All for One observed as his initial attacks failed to penetrate Izuku's evolved defenses. "The natural bond has advantages over our artificial integration." "What you've done isn't integration," Izuku responded, his voice carrying harmonic frequencies beyond human vocal range. "It's parasitism, corruption of the symbiote's true nature." The distinction proved crucial as the conflict escalated. Where All for One and Shigaraki wielded symbiote capabilities as weapons, external tools added to their existing powers, Izuku's transformation represented true symbiosis, each aspect enhancing the other in harmonic progression. This fundamental difference became most apparent when All for One attempted his most decisive tactic: direct quirk theft targeting not Izuku's transformation, but Zenith itself. The attack, which might have succeeded against their earlier bond configuration, encountered a consciousness structure so thoroughly integrated that separating quirk from host became meaningless. "You still don't understand," Izuku told him, advancing through energy discharges that would have incapacitated most heroes. "This isn't a quirk to be stolen, it's who we are." The statement wasn't mere rhetoric, but literal truth. The transformation had evolved beyond its original parameters into something approaching transcendent biology. As All for One escalated his attacks, bringing multiple stolen quirks to bear simultaneously, Izuku demonstrated capabilities that redefined what hero analysts would later classify as Kaiju-class response thresholds. His body adapted in real time to each attack vector, developing specific countermeasures against everything from decay acceleration to time manipulation. More impressive was his implementation of the swarm consciousness technique at unprecedented scale, manifesting semi-autonomous biological constructs that operated in coordination with his main form to engage multiple threats simultaneously. "He's not just fighting," Hawks observed from his position, coordinating aerial support. "He's evolving during the battle itself." The observation was accurate but incomplete. What witnesses couldn't fully comprehend was that Izuku wasn't simply adapting to immediate threats, but implementing biological configurations informed by Zenith's species memory, defensive systems developed over millions of years of symbiotic evolution across multiple worlds. The confrontation reached its critical phase when Shigaraki, his body further transforming under stress, manifested a decay field that threatened to spread beyond the battlefield to nearby civilian areas. The scale of the threat required immediate containment, with no time for evacuation or conventional barrier establishment. In response, Izuku demonstrated the most dramatic capability yet, a full apex transformation that increased his size to nearly 40 feet, with biological systems specifically configured to contain and neutralize Shigaraki's expanding decay field. The transformation wasn't just physical but functional, his body becoming essentially a living containment system. Remarkable, All For One commented, seemingly appreciative despite the tactical disadvantage. You've accessed capabilities even I hadn't predicted. Perhaps this makes our ultimate goal even more viable. What goal? Izuku demanded, maintaining the containment field around Shigaraki while simultaneously engaging All For One. Preparation, the villain replied simply. Earth stands at a crossroads, young Midoriya. The age of quirks was merely the beginning. What comes next requires different adaptations. The cryptic statement echoed Zenith's earlier warnings about approaching threats, a parallel that wasn't lost on Izuku as he pressed his attack. You know about the incursions, the harvesters. You're trying to prepare by stealing symbiote capabilities. Not just prepare, All For One corrected. Lead. Guide humanity's evolution through the coming crisis. Those who adapt will survive under my direction. The rest are simply resource material. The fundamental difference in their approaches crystallized in that moment. All For One seeking to control evolution for dominance, Izuku and Zenith representing protection through cooperative advancement. This philosophical divergence manifested physically as their confrontation reached its climax. All For One, integrating multiple quirks with his partial symbiote bond, created a reality distortion field that threatened the structural integrity of the surrounding area. The effect, similar to but more controlled than the Harvester's capabilities, began warping physical laws within its influence radius. In response, Izuku demonstrated the most advanced symbiotic capability yet, reality anchoring at biological level, his transformed body essentially rejecting the imposed alterations to natural law. Where All For One's field attempted to rewrite physical constants, Izuku's presence reinforced them, creating a bubble of stability that gradually expanded outward from his position. Impossible, All For One hissed, his confidence faltering for the first time. That capability requires complete species memory integration. You couldn't have achieved that level of bond yet. You still think in terms of control and acquisition, Izuku replied, advancing through the distortion field as it collapsed against his stabilizing presence. Zenith and I don't force integration, we achieve it through mutual growth. The fundamental difference in their approaches ultimately proved decisive. As the confrontation reached its final phase, All For One attempted his most desperate tactic, a forced consciousness transfer designed to take control of Izuku's body and symbiote simultaneously. The attack, targeting the perceived boundary between host and symbiote, encountered no such division to exploit. Instead of finding separable entities, All For One's consciousness transfer quirk encountered a unified awareness that reflected his intrusion back upon itself, creating a recursive loop that temporarily trapped his consciousness between bodies. In that moment of vulnerability, Izuku executed the decisive counterattack. Rather than conventional damage, he initiated a symbiote purification protocol, a biological process that systematically identified and eliminated the corrupted symbiote material integrated with All For One's body. The procedure wasn't destructive but restorative, essentially liberating the damaged symbiote fragments from All For One's control. "What are you doing?" All For One demanded, his voice distorting as the process continued. "Stop this immediately. I'm not destroying the symbiote," Izuku explained, maintaining the purification field. "I'm healing it, freeing it from the corruption you've forced upon it." As the process completed, All For One found himself suddenly without the symbiotic enhancements that had augmented his quirk collection, reduced to conventional parameters for the first time in generations. The psychological impact of this reduction, more than the physical limitations it imposed, created the opening needed for coordinated hero teams to implement the specialized containment protocols developed specifically for this confrontation. The capture of All For One marked not the end but a crucial turning point in what would become known as the Final War, a multi-phase conflict against not just domestic villains but increasingly frequent exobiological incursions. Throughout this extended crisis, Izuku's role evolved from exceptional individual to strategic linchpin in Earth's defense systems. Most significant was the formalization of what Endeavor had earlier suggested, official recognition of Kaiju-class hero as a distinct operational category, with Izuku as its defining exemplar. Rather than attempting to fit his capabilities into conventional hero frameworks, specialized protocols were developed around his unique operational profile. These protocols proved essential when, 6 months after All for One's capture, the threat he had been preparing for finally materialized in full: a coordinated incursion of multiple Harvester-class entities preceding what Zenith identified as a potential full invasion force. "They're attracted to the quirk phenomenon," Izuku explained during the international response briefing. "Earth's rapid evolutionary divergence has marked it as a high-value acquisition target. Like the Harvesters are assessment units. If they succeed, larger forces will follow." The global response united heroes across national boundaries, with specialized teams built around the capabilities demonstrated during previous encounters. At the center of this response network stood Izuku, no longer just UA's monster hero, but Earth's symbiote defender. His transformed state now a recognized symbol of protection, rather than cause for alarm. The final confrontation occurred in the upper atmosphere, where a coordinated hero team intercepted the Harvester coordination node before it could establish a planetary foothold. The battle, conducted in near-vacuum conditions that would have been lethal to conventional heroes, demonstrated the full evolution of Izuku's capabilities. His apex transformation, reaching its final developmental threshold of nearly 50 feet, incorporated specialized adaptations for space operation, not just survival, but full combat functionality in conditions that should have been impossible for Earth life forms. More impressive was his implementation of the complete symbiote communication network, a consciousness extension that allowed him to interface directly with the Harvester Overmind. What followed wasn't just combat, but negotiation at a level beyond conventional understanding. Izuku and Zenith presenting Earth's defense capability assessment directly to the invasion force coordination intelligence. The message was unambiguous. Earth had evolved beyond viable harvest parameters, with defensive capabilities specifically adapted to counter symbiote-based threats. As evidence, Izuku demonstrated the full range of adaptations developed throughout his hero journey. Not just physical transformation, but consciousness integration, reality anchoring, biological response diversity, and most significantly, harmonious symbiosis that enhanced both entities rather than subjugating either. The encounter ended not with destruction, but with recognition. The Harvester coordination node acknowledging Earth's protective capabilities and designating the planet as classification defended, integrated, rather than acquisition target. While not a permanent resolution to the exobiological threat, it represented a critical victory that established Earth's status in the broader cosmic ecosystem. When Izuku returned to Earth's surface, his transformation gradually receding as he descended through the atmosphere, he was met not with fear or even mere acceptance, but with something approaching reverence. Crowds gathering to witness the return of the hero, whose monstrous form had become synonymous with protection at the most fundamental level. The epilogue to this saga unfolded over subsequent years as Izuku's role in Hero Society evolved beyond conventional parameters. Rather than operating as a traditional pro-hero with agency affiliation and standard patrol routes, he established what would become known as the Symbiosis Protocol, a specialized training and response framework for heroes dealing with both quirk evolution and exobiological phenomena. Most significant was his relationship with the next generation of heroes, particularly those manifesting powers that placed them outside conventional classifications. Where once monstrous quirks had been seen as problematic or requiring special containment, Izuku's example created a new paradigm, one where unique biological expressions were evaluated for their protective potential rather than their deviation from human baseline. Eri, now a young teenager with full control over her once-feared rewind quirk, became one of his first specialized trainees. Under his guidance, she developed not just technical mastery, but philosophical integration, understanding her power not as burden, but as unique protection capability. "You taught me that being different isn't what makes someone a monster," she told him during a training session, successfully implementing a controlled rewind field that selectively affected damaged tissue while preserving healthy structures. "It's how we use our differences that matters." That's the most important lesson, Izuku agreed, his form partially transformed to demonstrate the parallel techniques they had been developing. Power itself is neutral. Purpose defines heroism. This perspective extended to his relationships with former classmates, many of whom had developed into top heroes in their own right. Particularly notable was his ongoing partnership with Bakugo and Todoroki, who had specialized in complementary tactical approaches that maximized effectiveness when coordinating with Kaiju-class responders. "It's not about competing with your power level anymore," Bakugo admitted during a joint operation debriefing. "It's about optimal deployment, knowing when conventional heroes can handle a situation and when we need to call in the monster." The terminology, once potentially offensive, had been reclaimed and redefined. Monster hero, now an official classification representing specialized capabilities beyond standard parameters. Izuku had not only accepted the designation, but embraced it as accurate description rather than pejorative label. Most profound was the evolution of his relationship with Zenith, no longer conceptualized as human host and alien symbiote, but as a unified entity representing a new evolutionary possibility. Their consciousness, once distinct but cooperative, had integrated to the point where separation became largely theoretical, each enhancing the other in continuous feedback loop of growth and adaptation. "We have become something unprecedented," Zenith observed during a quiet moment of reflection. "Neither fully human nor purely symbiote, but something new, a prototype for what might be possible." "Is that what you intended when you first bonded with me?" Izuku asked, curious about the original parameters of their relationship. "Not precisely," the symbiote acknowledged. "My initial purpose was observation and data collection. But adaptation is our fundamental nature, and what we have become together transcends original design parameters in ways neither of us could have anticipated." This transcendence manifested most visibly in what became Izuku's signature capability, the ability to shift seamlessly between human appearance, partial transformation, and full kaiju manifestation without the strain or limitations that had characterized his early development. Where once transformation had required conscious effort and energy expenditure, it now represented simply different expressions of a unified identity. On the 10th anniversary of the Harvester incursion, as heroes and civilians gathered to commemorate Earth's successful defense, Izuku demonstrated this integration with a transformation that embodied everything his journey had represented. Beginning in human form, he shifted through a sequence of increasingly complex manifestations, not just growing larger, but implementing specialized adaptations that showcased the full spectrum of what symbiotic evolution had achieved. At 45 feet, his apex form incorporated elements that would have been impossible in his earlier development: bioluminescent communication structures, reality anchoring field generators, adaptive response systems capable of countering multiple threat categories simultaneously. Yet, despite its objectively monstrous appearance, the transformation generated not fear but appreciation from the watching crowd, recognition of protection rather than threat. As he addressed the gathered audience, his voice carrying the harmonic resonance that characterized his fully transformed state, Izuku articulated the philosophy that had defined his evolution from frightened child to Earth's symbiotic defender. 10 years ago, we faced a threat that transcended conventional hero response capabilities. We prevailed not by overwhelming force, but by demonstrating that Earth's evolution had produced something unique: heroes whose diversity of expression represents not weakness, but specialized adaptation. Some of those adaptations may appear monstrous by traditional standards, but true monstrosity lies not in appearance or power, but in purpose. Looking out at the next generation of hero students, including those with quirks that place them outside conventional appearance parameters, he continued, "I began my journey believing I needed to hide what I could become, to restrain the monstrous aspects of my power for the comfort of others. What I learned through experience is that sometimes protection requires becoming exactly what others fear. The monster that defends is no monster at all, but the purest expression of heroism, power directed toward protection rather than domination." As he concluded his address, implementing a controlled transformation sequence that returned him to human form, Izuku recognized that his journey had come full circle. From the frightened child who had first encountered a strange meteorite in the forest, through the student struggling to control unprecedented power, to the defender who had embraced his nature without reservation. Each phase had been necessary for the evolution that followed. "We have become what was needed," Zenith observed as they surveyed the peaceful gathering, heroes and civilians united in celebration rather than divided by fear. Not what was expected or planned, but what Earth required for its protection. "That's the essence of heroism," Izuku agreed, watching as a child with clearly non-standard biology demonstrated her quirk without hesitation or shame to an appreciative audience. Becoming what's needed, regardless of expectations. In that moment of reflection, surrounded by the society he had helped transform, Izuku Midoriya, UA's monster hero, Earth's symbiotic defender, found perfect harmony between the human and alien aspects of his identity. The kaiju and the boy, once separate concepts in constant tension, had evolved into integrated expression of a single truth. True heroism transcends form, finds strength in difference, and recognizes that sometimes protection requires unleashing the very power others fear. The monster hero had become exactly what the world needed, not despite his nature, but because of it.
Before we close, I want to give a huge thank you to the legends who keep these stories alive. To the symbols of peace, Samuel Segilola, Hassassin24, Howie 60, Ignacio, Albert Edejumo, Carlos Terry, Rafael Turan, and Kevin Hall. Your support lights the path forward. And to the hopes of the universe, Major and Colsey, your strength pushes this channel to even greater heights. Every name here is part of the reason these what-if movies exist, and I couldn't do it without you. Thank you for believing in the vision, and thank you for being part of this journey.
And that's how our kaiju-powered Deku would completely reshape the world of heroes. From a scared little boy learning to control alien powers, to the unleashed protector who no longer holds back against any threat. If you enjoyed this epic what-if scenario, smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible alternate My Hero Academia storylines. What other powers would you like to see Deku possess? Drop your ideas in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.